Almost every day I wonder how things could have gotten this far. I'm sure I have high blood pressure and probably a whole bunch of other illnesses that will ultimately hasten my death. In my case, death will be a welcome release. This has to be better than the constant pain and depression I've been living with for 11 years. My friends also wonder why this happened. I think it's hard for them to imagine being a prisoner for so long. If you think about it, 11 years is a long time. In certain circumstances, I could be released sooner if I killed someone. But I didn't commit any crimes. Sometimes I can't help myself. Sometimes I look at the clock ticking on the wall. I watch the minute and second hands as they slowly circle the dial. Sometimes I look beyond minutes and seconds and allow myself to think of time in days or weeks or even months. Sometimes I look to the future and wonder what I could do and what my life would be like if I were free. Sometimes, when I look at the smiling face of the warden as he walks up the stairs to go about his business, I begin to wonder what my life will be like when I am no longer condemned to serve under him. Even though he's not supposed to, I've seen him take women to his room. I think he has the right to have a woman from time to time, even if I can't. It's been 11 years since I had a woman. No dates for me. I don't trust women anymore. After all, it was a woman who did this to me. She took my courage, broke my heart, and destroyed my trust in women at the same time. Of course, if you ask her, she always says the same thing. She says, "It's not my fault, it was all just a mistake." The worst part is that she was supposed to be the person I would spend the rest of my life with. She was the woman I loved more than any other person on this earth. She was my wife, the mother of my children, and, as I always thought, my soul mate. My sun, my moon, and my whole world revolved around June. Maybe it was too much responsibility for one person. It's terrible to put someone so high on a pedestal and then see them fall miserably. As I pull into the exit lane, my aging but still powerful 1999 Mustang GT growls a little. The low hum is her way of letting all the cars around us know that although she's already 14 years old, and at least a few generations out of date compared to the beautiful 2013 Mustang that sped past us a few miles ago, she's still a beast. Of course, she is a toothless beast, because now even V6s have more horsepower than her, but that doesn't matter to her or to me. I gently pat her on the dashboard and reassure her that she is still my girl. A rare smile appears on my lips when Journey's "Don't Stop Believin'" comes on the radio. Just a city boy, born and raised on the south side of Detroit. That's where the verse ends for me. You see, I missed that midnight train going anywhere, and I'm still stuck here. I never stopped believing. My faith was ripped out of me along with my dreams of a good life. And every time I try to hold on to this feeling, it slips away from me as I contemplate the walls of my prison. But someday, like all the caged birds, I will be free. I sing along with Steve and his boys for a few blocks, and then my temporary joy and hope for the day the prison doors open disappears. I sigh, turn off the engine, and get out of the car. My home is a small but well-kept ranch in the suburbs, not far from Detroit. It doesn't cost a lot of money, and the area isn't what it used to be, but at least it's outside the city limits. Most of our neighbors are jealous of my house, but I am jealous of their happiness and their life. Since I have neither, all my energy goes into the house, car, and especially children. I call my children overseers because they are the only reason I am stuck here. I love my children more than anything in the world. There's nothing I wouldn't do for them, so enduring all this is a trifle. My daughter, Melissa, is in college, and her brother Todd will be joining her in less than a year. I smile just thinking about it, and then I smile again as I open the door and walk into the house. "Hey, Dell," June says as I walk into the house. I notice that the house smells absolutely wonderful. "I cooked a roast," she says. "I cooked it the way you like it, with carrots and celery. Of course, I added potatoes because your son loves them." I don't even look at her. I go into the bedroom and take out my workout clothes from the drawers and closet. I change my clothes and go outside again to run. I can't help but see June's face as I pass her. "Todd will go to a friend's house to study after training," she says. Should I wait and have dinner with you or leave you a plate in the oven? None of this, please, I say without looking at her. I probably won't be very hungry. I quickly leave to avoid further conversation. I run down my street and nod or wave to the neighbors I pass before I get to the park. As soon as I enter the park, I start running faster and pretend that I don't see or notice the people I pass. An hour later, I stumble into the house again, tired and out of breath. I take a warm shower and heat up a slice of pizza left over from 3 days ago for dinner. June frowns as she watches me do this. She goes to shower while I eat with a Pepsi pizza. Del, can we talk? She asks. I turn to look at her. June, even at her age, is still an attractive woman, at least to me. But my opinion probably doesn't matter because I loved her from the moment I first saw her. As I wait for her to begin her next futile attempt, I shake my head and look at her. She is short, with brown hair cut into a pixie cut. Her breasts are small. I'm laying out the blanket that always lies on the sofa when she approaches me. Del, why are you still sleeping on the couch? She begins. This makes no sense. I'm sleeping on the couch because you turned Melissa's room into an office, I say. I was planning on sleeping there, but it just wasn't worth arguing about. Besides, I'm used to disappointments and things not going the way I want. Del, there's no reason for you to sleep in Melissa's room when we have our own room. I would never try to force you to do anything, but don't you miss? She falls silent and sighs heavily. Del, I would give anything just to sleep next to you again. She tries to hide her sobs, but they still break out. Del, 10 years have passed, she cries. I want you so much that I'm ready to rip my hair out. Couldn't we? Just once? June, have you run out of guys for sex? I ask. Are you so desperate that you're pestering me now? Del, there were no guys, she sobs. I haven't slept with anyone but myself since. Well, that's your problem, I grin. There's a whole line of women behind me. I carry more pipes than a team of plumbers. And I do it all, June. All those things you swore you would do just for me that you did with. Stop it, Del, she shouts. Don't say another word. I lie down on the sofa and pull the blanket over myself. Do you want to know why I was late home today? I grin. She looks at me through tears. I was with Sue. She gave me the best pleasure of my life. Tears stream down her cheeks, and she turns to the computer in the corner of the room. She types out an email and hands it to me. The message details everything I've done since I left my job. You left work at the usual time and stopped for gas, she says. You checked the oil level yourself and went into the station to buy a liter. You filled it yourself. You took the long drive home and sat in the car in the driveway humming some old rock song, she says. There is silence in the room for some time. Where is this about what you just told me? She asks. If you want it so bad, all you have to do is ask. And you don't have to invent anything. I will do whatever you want, exactly the way you want. I will do this as often as you want, for as long as you want. June, why do you have money for a private detective to watch me, but no money for a divorce? I ask. Because I don't want any damn divorce, she screams. And Jerry sometimes watches you for me for free. Probably because you're having sex with him, I grin. Del, the only person I want to have sex with is you, she screams. But darling, I'm going crazy. It's been too long. I gave you permission a long time ago, I say. I said you can go and have sex with anyone you want. Just don't bring them here. Hell, you can have sex with multiple guys again. Nothing will change between us anyway. She turns around and walks back to the room that used to be our bedroom. I try to sleep, but I hear her crying until I fall asleep. June. Lying there, sobbing in my bed, I feel pain. My body, my mind, and my heart hurt, but I know that I only have myself to blame. My heart has been hurting for over 10 years now. Of all the women I know, including other married ones, I am the only one who is monogamous. My husband is the only man I will ever love. My heart hurts because in some way I'm not with the man I love most in the world. We live in the same house. We see each other every day. and we're still married. But he barely speaks to me, and he doesn't look at me the same way anymore. Dell used to look at me like I was the only woman on the planet, or at least the sexiest, and that meant so much more to me than anything else. I know that most women would judge me and say that I should think of myself as a mother first, a woman second, and a wife last. But in my heart, my wife always came first. To feel like a woman, I needed a man, and that man was my husband. More than anything in the world, I needed love. I needed to know that my man loved me. This meant more to me than anything else I could imagine. My love for my husband, more than anything else in the world, drove me forward day after day in the hope that he would get through this. My mind, on the other hand, told me to stay strong and stay the course. I was confident that this time I was making progress. In fact, all things considered, I should have been delighted. Dell and I just had a conversation of sorts. We exchanged more than one sentence, and he actually said something rather than just grunting or answering in monosyllables. And most importantly, he looked at me. And with that feminine instinct that all women have, I knew that he liked what he saw and that he wanted me. Perhaps my husband didn't admit it. He might not even admit it to himself, but Dell wanted me. I knew that look in his eyes as well as I knew my own face in the mirror. If he were the same man I married, he would have laid me on my back right now. I could imagine him spreading my legs and having sex with me until I passed out. My body, of course, was the weak link in the chain. I'm still a person, and I am subject to all the desires and weaknesses to which all people are subject. In fact, it was my body that ruined my life. When I say my body, don't think that I'm claiming to be a sex star or some kind of sex goddess. I'm not the model type at all. If you imagine a tall, slender blonde with large breasts, forget about it. I'm barely 5 feet tall. It's hard to tell that I'm a size B, and my butt is a little bigger than it should be. I could tell my legs were a little on the fat side, but Dell adored me. At least before. Dell and I have been together for 20 years. We met when I was 20, and he was not yet 19. For the first 2 years, we just dated, but it was a date unlike any other I'd ever had. It didn't matter where we went or when. The main thing was that we were together. I felt more passion and love sitting on a park bench with Wardell Cleaver than I ever had in bed with someone who was trying to give me pleasure. To everyone who knew me, there was no doubt that I would marry Dell and bear him children. The only question was when. We got married 2 years later, although we didn't quite finish our studies. We really had a wonderful life plan. We were going to get our degrees, become successful, then get married and have kids. The plan was for 4 children. But shit happens. There was no mention in the plan that we would have to get married before we graduated so that our daughter would not be born out of wedlock. There was also no provision in the plan that we would both have to take terrible jobs just to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. And of course, nowhere in the plan did it mention that the economy would collapse and we would struggle to make ends meet for most of our lives. But no matter what, we lived, loved, and laughed at what life threw at us. And again, it didn't matter that we didn't have wealth. The main thing was that we were together. Most of all, we were happy. Many of our wealthier friends were jealous of us. When they talked about the latest TV shows, we laughed. The only TV we had was in the playroom, the children's room, and it was very old. We didn't have time for such things. We had a schedule to follow. On Sunday evenings, we relaxed. They lay next to each other, holding each other tightly. We exchanged only tender kisses and talked about our future. On Mondays, we had sex. Monday night was our rough and tumultuous night of passion. Most Mondays, I took off my panties as soon as I got home from work. I never knew when or how Dell would take me, only that he would. In the summer, we often had to leave the house so that the children would not hear what we were doing. On Tuesdays, there were only oral sessions. I think we both developed our oral skills thanks to these Tuesdays. Thursday night was women's choice night. Dell knew that meant a lot of cuddling and slow, romantic lovemaking. I think even to this day, it's those nights that I miss the most. I would give anything to have my Thursday nights back. I swear both my babies were conceived on Thursday night. Friday evening was dedicated to research and learning. We would try something new or rent movies and try what they saw. We tried role-playing games. Now I cry even more when I think about the mess I made. Once again, I want to note that we didn't have many of them. We were not, and to this day, not rich or even wealthy, but we were happy. We knew everyone in our area and often had parties and get-togethers. When we were married a little over 7 years, everything went to hell. It all started slowly, but one event led to another, which led to our death. Our neighbor was a very old woman. She had had to overcome a number of obstacles over the previous few years. First, her husband died. We helped her through it, but she was never the same. I felt sympathy for her because I knew then that if Dell ever left me, I would be in the same boat. I will literally just waste away until I can join him. In her case, it took several years, but her mind was the first to leave her. She started seeing him everywhere and even talking to him. I remember many times when we were sitting on her or my back porch, and she would suddenly start talking to him and even wait for him to answer. She laughed and reached out to him as if he were still there. Then she began to forget all sorts of things, such as where she had been or even how to dress before leaving the house. I was forced to contact her children, and one day they came and took her away. They rented out her house, and that was another domino in my disaster. At first, they handed it over to families. Eventually, it was rented to 3 college students who were constantly throwing parties. Sometimes Dell and I would go to their parties, and sometimes we would party alone. Dell tried to succeed at his job and sometimes worked extra shifts. I couldn't complain because we needed the money, but the extra hours of being apart were hard on me. On one of these occasions, knowing my kids were asleep, I went into the next room just to have a few drinks and get some relief from the anxiety of Dell not being with me. It was the biggest mistake I've ever made. There were at least 10 or 12 beautiful young women there, so I didn't feel threatened. This was another mistake. I didn't notice the fine details. All the men present drank only beer. It was the girls who were suppressing the spiked punch at an alarming rate. I knew there were additives in the punch, but I thought they added a little booze to it just to make it more spicy. I was wrong. I was just going to have a quick drink or two and then head home to wait for Dell. After all, late or not, it was Thursday. I was already starting to feel a little horny, actually more than a little, and I felt very warm too. That's all I remember before I woke up in one of the beds on the second floor with 3 college guys piled on top of me. Well, these bitches are crazy. All I felt was pain. These idiots were just using my body as a playground attraction. There was no love or compassion in what they did. I screamed and pushed them away from me, even when I regained consciousness. "Hey, baby, where are you going?" one of the drunk guys exclaimed when I got out of bed and staggered out of the room, collecting my clothes as I went. I never found my panties, but I got out of there in less than 2 minutes. Unfortunately, I was out of it for much longer than I thought. Dell's Mustang was already in the driveway. I slipped into the house, shouting his name. Earlier that day, I was at another neighbor's house, and she invited us to a party she was having over the weekend. I told my husband the first lie of our marriage. I told him I was down the street and not next door. It was the worst moment of my life. I stood in front of my husband as he sat on the edge of the bed in our children's room and lied. It didn't matter that I did it to save my marriage and our happiness. I felt terrible. And even as I said those words, I looked at him and knew on some level that he didn't believe me. Without another word, he leaned over and kissed my daughter's forehead as she slept. He then did the same to her brother. He walked past me without saying a word. Dell and I were always touching each other, and I hoped and prayed that just this one time he wouldn't grab my ass. "Oh, please, Lord," I prayed. "I haven't been to church in over 7 years since we got married, but if you let me get away with it." Dell left the room without touching me. My prayer has come true, but for some reason I still felt like I had lost something. "Dell, where are you going?" I asked. "Dinner," was all he said. I felt like I had won the lottery. I went to the bathroom and took a long, very hot shower. Luckily, it was a ladies' night and I had a plan. As the warm water poured down on me, I began to think that I could get away with this. I stayed in the shower, washing myself and showering myself until the hot water ran out in the water heater. Then I put on one of Dell's old t-shirts and went to bed to wait for him. I knew something was funny because he never had to eat that long if I waited for him, especially not on Thursday. And that Thursday, after what those idiots did to me, I really needed to make love. I didn't need to be tricked into having sex with me. I didn't need multiple guys to have sex with me. I didn't need to just be had. I needed my husband to hold me and express his love physically. I needed to be held, caressed, and kissed like something special. A few minutes later, I went to look for Dell. It wasn't my fault. These bastards drugged me with something and took advantage of me. They deserved to be sent to prison. Unfortunately, I couldn't do this. If I did this, it would mean that my husband would find out not only that I lied to him, but also that I left our children alone to go to a party. There was also the fact that I was 30 and not a college student, and I knew what was going on at these neighborhood parties. I also promised Dell that I wouldn't go there again without him. Any revenge on those bastards next door had to be such that Dell would never know what I did. My marriage meant more to me than revenge for temporary pain. Besides, they didn't hurt me much. All they did was warm me up for what was going to happen anyway. When I walked around the house, I was surprised to find that Dell hadn't even touched his dinner. Finally, I found him in the children's room. He curled up on the floor and watched TV. That in itself was strange. Neither of us watched TV. "Darling, are you going to bed?" I asked. "I'll be there soon," he replied. His voice sounded mechanical. He sounded like one of the movie characters who was captured by aliens. "I'm looking," his voice broke off, and I realized that he didn't even know what he was looking at. He didn't watch TV. He just stared at the screen, and his thoughts were somewhere far away. He actually followed me into the bedroom and started taking off his clothes. I think he took a shower. He didn't even seem to notice that the water wasn't hot. And probably I was too absorbed in my thoughts to notice the strangeness in his behavior. Of course, now I understand that he was simply doing everything to avoid me, but then I was only thinking about surviving until the morning. I kept thinking that if I could just hold out until the morning, everything would be fine. We finally got into bed, and his skin was ice cold. He was also wearing boxer shorts. I don't remember him ever sleeping in anything. "Dell, take these things off," I said, smiling. I approached him and wanted to please him. This moment killed me. It's like when you take out your iPhone. You carefully press the button on top, preparing to connect with your loved ones, friends, or the world via the internet. Then you look down and have that sinking feeling when you discover that your iPhone, that marvel of technology that does so much, doesn't work. You feel strangely cut off, not just from some stupid phone, but from everything. It's as if one of your organs is damaged. I felt the same way. We had been together for 10 years, and this was the first time that my touch did not arouse my husband. Usually, if I looked at Dell's askance, he would already become agitated. I could accidentally touch him, even if he had a fever, and he would want me. It was really bad when he was sick and physically couldn't, because he still got excited. I looked at him in shock. "Sorry, I'm just not in the mood today," he said. My mind was split. Different areas of my brain tried to focus on different aspects of the situation. On the one hand, if Dell doesn't want sex, if we can just take one night off, then that's fine. On the other hand, I really needed to be in his arms. I needed reassurance that I was still loved and valuable, and not just a prostitute or a piece of meat that those bastards made me feel like. And another part of my mind wondered why, for the first time in our marriage, my husband didn't want to have sex with me. Instead of working as a whole, different parts of my brain fought for supremacy, and I never managed to put all the pieces together. Instead of a completed puzzle, I was left with a bunch of scattered pieces. The next day, my sister came to visit me. We talked about our parents, our other halves, and all the things that sisters usually talk about. But after some time, she suddenly asked directly, "What happened to you?" she asked. "Don't say Ward was too rough with you last night, huh?" "His name is Dell," I said. He hates being called Ward. Damn, sister, she said. Sorry. I didn't know it was so serious. But you are doing something crazy with him. Not last night, I said. She laughed at me. Is that all that's bothering you? Are you a nymphomaniac or what? This has never happened before, I said. She looked at me like I was crazy. Damn it, girl, you should be glad for the break. Nobody has sex every night. Hell, you've been together for 10 years and you're still like newlyweds. Look, stupid, the average couple has sex 1 to 3 times a week. You have twice as much as others. Sometimes there are downturns in relationships. Buy yourself new underwear. Send him something dirty over the phone while he's at work. Soon he will have you as his personal sex toy again. Are you sure? I asked. Absolutely, she said. Mary sometimes gets drunk and we don't have sex for several weeks. Then I bend over to get a saucepan from the bottom cabinet, and she drags me into the bedroom and has sex with me until we both pass out. There will always be ups and downs in your sex life. I felt much better when she left. Dell returned home and spent some time leafing through the American Muscle catalog. Whenever he was able to find parts for his Mustang at a discount, he always bought them. This usually lifted his spirits. Well, at least before, but not that evening. After a week without sex, I started to worry. 2 weeks later, I started climbing the wall, and it wasn't just the lack of sex. Dell didn't touch my ass anymore, he rarely kissed me, and even then it wasn't on the lips. Even in bed at night, he did not hold me or hug me while we slept. I kept asking him what was going on, but he just said everything was fine. I was sure not. In fact, the only reason he might not want to have sex with me was because he was having it with someone else. I needed to find out who she was so I could kill this bitch and get my husband back. It never occurred to me to divorce him or anything like that. I just wanted him back. Dell and I have been forever. Everything else was just interference. I work as a stenographer for a very large law firm. The company employs many private detectives and investigators. I'm pretty friendly in a non-sexual way with most of the people who work here. I decided to ask one of the guys to spend a little time spying on my husband. 3 weeks later, he returned with a report. He followed Dell every day during those 3 weeks, except for the days when he worked for the company and the weekends when Dell was at home with me. He didn't notice the slightest hint of anything inappropriate. Dell not only didn't cheat on me, he didn't even allow himself harmless flirting in the office. I already knew that he wasn't cheating, but it was nice to confirm my suspicions. I noticed that the only time Dell seemed truly happy was when he was around our children. When he was with the kids, he was still the same Dell we all knew and loved. So obviously the problem was somewhere else. Another week passed, and I realized that we hadn't had sex in 6 weeks. Then I started to get angry. At first, I just attacked him and asked what was going on. Dell, dear, what's going on? I asked. Nothing, he replied. Then why haven't we had sex in 6 damn weeks? I asked. Maybe we're in a recession, he said. Is there anything I can do to get us out of this recession? I asked. Nothing I could think of, he said and left, although the conversation was not finished. I was thinking about everything that had happened recently, but for some reason the incident next door did not come to my mind because I was sure that he knew nothing about it. I went to Della's doctor and told him about our problems. He immediately gave me several samples of both Cialis and Viagra. He told me to tell Dell to try both and see which works best for us. I left them on Dell's dresser and told him to take one of the pills before we went to bed that evening. He looked at the packages and laughed hysterically for more than 20 minutes, and then just went to bed. The next day, I told him that he didn't need to feel embarrassed about his little problem. I read articles about it, dear. This happens to most men at some point, I said. What are you talking about? He asked. Well, about your, erectile dysfunction, I whispered. He started laughing again and didn't stop. Dell, this isn't funny, I said, starting to get angry. If you don't have Ed, is there something you want to tell me? I asked. Is there something you want to tell me? He answered in the same way. I've been courting you for 2 months now, I shouted. I'm trying to understand why you treat me so badly. I didn't do anything to deserve this. His face hardened, and it scared me. In all our years together, Dell never lost patience between us. And although he hid it well, I knew that he was definitely angry with me. As usual, he didn't want to get into a verbal altercation, so he simply walked away, leaving me screaming after him. Over the next few days, I watched Dell even more closely. If he walked into a room alone, I would appear there within a minute. If he closed the door, I immediately opened it and went to see what he was doing. I didn't find anything. He didn't watch an adult movie, although I wouldn't have minded since we often did it together, at least in the past. Then I made a discovery in the most cunning way. We had one of those CCTV cameras that looked like a teddy bear. I left it in our room while Dell dozed. I told him I was going shopping, and he just mumbled something in response. I waited about 30 minutes and returned to the house. I opened the door to our bedroom and found Dell looking at our wedding album. I always got home a couple of hours before Dell, so I checked the camera before he came home the next day. While the children were playing in the yard, I watched the recording and burst into tears. My husband, like many men, satisfied himself. I just couldn't understand it. There was obviously no doubt that he liked me. God, if I weren't so excited, I might even find it flattering. The problem was that Dell was mad at me for some reason, and he didn't want to tell me what it was. That evening we quarreled like never before. And yes, I did it on purpose. I hoped that I could anger him enough to make him spill the beans, or at least accidentally reveal why he was so angry. But he never said anything. The next day, I took the day off. I still took the kids to school and daycare, but I was too excited to work. I needed to solve the problems in our marriage before I went crazy. I always thought better when I was cleaning or doing housework. I was working in my garden when it happened. At one point, I was kneeling in the ground, pulling out weeds, and then a whistle sounded. I turned around and looked straight into the eyes of one of the guys who had sex with me at the party. "I guess I wasn't as drunk that night as I thought," he said. I went back to my weed pulling. "This ass is amazing," he said. "Why didn't you come to see us anymore?" "As if I would actually come here and let you have sex with me again," I spat. "You liked it, and as soon as you said to stop, we stopped." "I didn't like it," I said. I was under something and didn't understand anything. "Damn, we should have told you not to drink the punch," he said. "Everyone who comes to our parties knows that you can only drink a punch if you want to get into bed. I'm very sorry that this happened." He seemed so sincere, and we continued talking that day. I told him that I would like to get this punch for my husband, and as soon as I said this, I realized that this was the perfect solution to my problem. I could put it in Dell's drink and force him to do what he should have been doing anyway. Husbands always claim that their wives are not fulfilling their marital responsibilities, and that's exactly how I felt about Dell. It just didn't make sense. "Can you give me some of this?" I asked. "Well," he began, "it's quite expensive, but maybe we can come to an agreement." I knew it was wrong from the very beginning, but I couldn't bear 2 more months without my husband. This time, there was no risk of anything going wrong. This time, we will be at my house. I closed the curtains in the living room, and we went in through the back door so no one would see him coming. He wanted to have sex with me, but I told him that was out of the question. I'll give him pleasure with my hands and let him look at my ass, maybe feel it, but that's all. As soon as we entered the living room, he sat down on the sofa. "Take off your jeans," he said dully. I did this, and his eyes became huge. "Wiggle that ass, baby, shake it," he said. "Where is it?" I asked. He pulled a tiny bottle from his pocket. He picked it up and then hit it again. I needed this. While I was watching, he took off his pants too. The very knowledge that he was so excited excited me too. Before he could get far, I crawled towards him and, unable to restrain myself, began to give him pleasure. While I was doing this, he squeezed my breasts and my desire flared. 2 months without sex, and I couldn't wait any longer. There were no drugs here. He pushed me onto the carpet, and we started having sex. And then everything suddenly became clear. Sex next door happened 2 months ago. I suddenly realized that from some of our rooms you could see the house next door unless the curtains were closed. Could Dell have seen what happened to me and misunderstood? The more I thought about it, the more likely it seemed. I needed to call him so we could talk about it. I had to make him understand what happened. I screamed and pushed the sweaty guy away with a strength I didn't know I had in myself. "Get away from me," I screamed. There is such a thing as Murphy's Law. I don't remember the exact wording, but the gist of it is that everything that can go wrong will go wrong at the most inopportune moment. "You could let him finish," said a voice behind us. "No," I screamed when I saw my husband's eyes. "Get out of my house," he said calmly. "Both." My mind refused to process what he said. Actually, I don't know the exact medical term for this condition, but I just zoned out. I remember everything that happened during my nervous breakdown, but then I simply lost control of my movements and sank to the floor. Dell looked at me, and I looked at him. It seems only the stupid guy next door was able to move. He buttoned his pants, trying to pull them on. I don't know what the trigger was, but something did. Maybe it happened when the guy next door realized he couldn't pull his pants up on his knees. But as soon as he started to get up, Dell snapped. He crossed the room so quickly it was as if he had teleported, and hit the guy in the face so hard that I heard a crunch through the hands with which I covered my ears. I turned towards the sound. I think that sound brought me out of my shock paralysis. But my feelings were still distorted. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion. I saw and followed Dell's second strike as it slowly approached what was left of the guy next door. This blow hit him on the cheek. I watched as the blow reflected on his face and his head jerked to the side. I can't imagine the pain this must have caused him, but I can still hear him screaming in my head even more than 10 years later. This scream made me move. I grabbed Dell from behind and pulled him off the guy. "Dell, don't do this," I screamed. "You will kill him." He turned and looked at me. It was like looking into an abyss. My husband, my sweet, kind, compassionate husband and father of my children, was not in his eyes. I saw only rage and pain. "Get this bag of shit out of my house, bitch," he spat in my face. "Dell, he's unconscious," I said. "We have to call an ambulance." I took the phone and called an ambulance. The problem was that when you call 911, the cops show up. The next 4 hours were interesting. At first, the police wanted to arrest Dell for assault and attempted murder, but once they found the vial in the guy's pocket and heard the story, especially what they did to me, they decided not to charge Dell if we agreed to cooperate. The guy was arrested for possession of a controlled substance. The police also went to the house next door and found a lot more substances there, so they arrested all of his roommates as well. All three will serve at least 10 years in prison. Before their lives and careers begin, they will already be over. My sister had to pick up our kids from school and daycare, but I was most worried about Dell. He didn't say a word the entire time we were there. Even when the police took my statement and I wanted him to be there to hear it, he refused to talk to me. The police told me that those guys were predators and that anyone could have been their victim. There were a lot of girls they hurt, and many of them will probably come forward now. They said I was brave for talking about it. I hoped Dell would see it that way too. Once we put the kids to bed, I turned to him and he finally said something to me. This was not at all what I expected. I thought he would say, "Oh, Junie, I'm sorry for what those animals did to you," or "We'll get through this," or "I didn't know." I was surprised. "You can start packing now," he said. "What?" I asked in shock. "Dell, I was taken advantage of." My voice was louder than I wanted. I didn't want the children to hear anything. They were sleeping, but I didn't want to risk it. I reached out to grab his hand and lead him to the kitchen. As soon as my hand approached his, he pulled him away as if I were poison. "Don't touch me," he said. "Can we talk somewhere where the children won't hear us, like in the kitchen?" I asked. He just left me. When I reached the kitchen, I sat down while he nervously walked from corner to corner. I made his favorite raspberry cocoa for both of us. "Can we talk calmly?" I asked, handing him the cup. He moved so fast that I didn't have time to see it. He knocked the cup with his hand and it smashed against the wall. "What do you think this is?" he hissed. "I don't want to reconcile with you. I just want you to leave so I can try to piece my life back together. I have so many things to understand." "Like what?" I asked. "Such as how to explain to my children why their mother no longer lives with us," he said angrily. The thought of having to live without my husband and children caused me pain like I had never experienced in my life. I was speechless. "You just had to do it again, didn't you?" he hissed. I saw his face and finally understood where all this rage came from. Dell was in pain that no man could bear. Rage was his way of dealing with the pain he was experiencing. "I saw it for the first time, you know," he said, "and I probably got it all wrong. I thought they drugged you with something, but I wasn't sure." "What the hell do you mean?" I asked. "Of course they pumped me up. Why do you think they brought me into this room in the first place?" "But June, you didn't see," he said, tears streaming down his face. "I was so angry that I couldn't see anything in front of me. I was going to go there and kill them all. And then I saw you pushing them away from you, and I couldn't understand what was happening. I didn't know if you had just come to your senses or if you had suddenly realized the time and were worried that your stupid hubby would soon return home and find you with his lovers." "Dell, look at me," I said. "You are my only lover. These bastards took advantage of me." "Then why the hell did you spend all day talking to one of them?" he asked. "And why the hell did you bring that bastard into my house?" Before I could say anything, he spoke again. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. "Has there ever been a time in the last 10 goddamn years when you couldn't tell me something?" I reached out to wipe his tears, but he pushed my hands away. "You were everything to me," he cried. "Lord, what a fool I was. I kept waiting for you to tell me what happened so we could get through it together, or so I could go out there and beat the crap out of those guys. If it was something you didn't want, you probably would have said something. I waited day after day, week after week, but you didn't say a damn word. In the end, I came to the conclusion that I was right all along. You didn't say anything because you liked it. My wife, my best friend, the mother of my children, the woman I wanted to grow old with, turned out to be nothing more than just another prostitute for sex. Do you know how much I missed you? Do you know how much I missed what we had? I feel like such an idiot, and today you just confirmed it. I came home to change because I tore the shirt I was wearing. I saw you talking to that bastard over the fence, and then inviting him over to us. And then you brought him into our house. And this time you weren't even on drugs." "Dell, you need to let me explain this," I said. "What is there to explain?" he asked. "What explanation can you have for pleasing another man and letting him have sex with you in our home?" I didn't know what to say. "So how long have you been doing this?" he asked. "Am I going to look like a fool in court trying to get custody of children that may not even be mine?" "Dell, what are you talking about? We don't need to go to court. The police told you there are no charges against us. We're not going to jail, so we don't have to worry about keeping custody of our kids. They will be here with us, as always. In fact, we should think about getting another one." "Are you crazy?" he shouted. "You arrange sex with several guys who take any woman they can pump up. I have no idea what cocktail of diseases is brewing inside you. You never forced your lovers to use a condom, and I know we're not going to jail. I'm talking about getting custody of the children in a divorce." I was too shocked to say anything. I just started crying even harder. Dell picked up the phone and started talking. "Look, I know we don't really get along," he told someone, "but I really need a big favor. Can you come and get your sister before I hurt her?" After that, he left the room. I followed him, but he entered the children's room and locked the door from the inside. I sat by the door and tried to talk to Dell through it, but he didn't answer me. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang, and I went to open it. My sister, May, looked at me strangely. "Where is he?" she asked. "What did he do? Didn't he hurt you?" I just shook my head. "I will kill this bastard," she screamed. "Ward Cleaver, get out here," she screamed. I told her to be quiet because the children were sleeping. "I don't care," she said. "I want him. I told you not to marry him. He will pay for what he did to you." Then she looked at me. "What did he do to you?" she asked. Then Dell came out to us. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Make sure she packs enough clothes and doesn't forget her medications. You should also take the big fluffy blanket from the hallway. She's about to get her period, and she always likes to wrap herself in it while someone rubs her belly." Ward turned to leave, and May sat down on the couch. She was stunned. She looked at me, and there was a look of confusion on her face. "Tell me what the hell is going on," she said sharply. "Can't I just go stay with you for a few days until things calm down?" I asked. "Junie, don't you want to take the kids with you?" she asked. "You don't want to take your children away from this monster?" "He's their father," I laughed. "Dell would never hurt them. He will never harm me either. They'd rather stay home with their dad and all their toys than be cramped in your little apartment." "I knew you would say that," she said, looking me over. "Junie, you know I don't love him. I never loved him. But when I saw the look on his face a couple of minutes ago, it knocked me off my feet. I don't know him very well. In the 10 years you've been with him, I don't think I've ever sat with him for more than 5 minutes. But I know one thing. This man is suffering very much." When I looked into his eyes, I saw devastation. Remember when I worked for the Red Cross? I was involved in disaster relief. I've seen thousands of people lose everything due to natural disasters or things they simply couldn't foresee or control. Everyone had this expression of overwhelming grief. When you looked into their eyes, you could see that they were standing on a razor's edge between trying to start their lives over again or just giving up and ending it. "Junie, I saw that same expression on your husband's face. I also saw a lot of pain and even a little anger," she said. "Do you know what was wrong?" I shook my head and looked at her. I didn't see a trace of guilt. At first I thought that whatever he did to you, he didn't think it was wrong or thought he was right. Then I looked again and noticed tears. "Junie, men don't cry when they screw up. They just get angry and try to solve the problem or make some kind of deal. He came out here knowing I didn't love him, and even then the only thing he said was about caring for you. He didn't yell or swear at you. He also didn't beg you to stay and give him another chance. I think I should go back there and try to talk to him, shouldn't I?" "No," I said. "Let's just leave and give him a chance to calm down. We don't want to irritate him." "Junie, you are my sister and I love you," she began. "But you're a damn liar. You don't want me to go back there because we both know that when he came out here, he was barely hanging on. He's probably in your kid's room right now, crying his eyes out, isn't he? He's there because his children are all he has left. So I need the truth, Junie. What did you do with him?" "May, can't we just discuss this in the car?" I said. I packed a few things and we left. I didn't want to tell her what happened. I was hoping that Dell and I would talk overnight or within a couple of days. I was shocked. My brain refused to process what was happening. Everything I knew, everything that was the essence of my existence, told me that our breakup or the end of my marriage with Dell was simply impossible. I called Dell, but he didn't pick up. I left several messages, first asking, then begging, and finally literally begging for him to let me come home and talk to him. I held the phone as if guarding the royal jewels. I was more surprised than anything when it rang. I looked at the screen and answered immediately when I recognized our home number. "Hello, dear. I'm so sorry," I muttered hoarsely. "For what, Mom?" asked my 8-year-old daughter. "Dad told us that Aunt May is sick and you need to take care of her. It's not your fault. You're just a good sister. Dad says Todd, and I should talk to you every day so you know we both love you, even if you're not here." "Where is your dad? Can I talk to him?" I asked. "He cooks dinner and plays with Todd at the same time. They are playing one of Todd's video games. Todd wins because Dad is always running into the kitchen to make sure the food doesn't burn." "Ask him to answer the phone," I said. I heard her talking to him and heard something I couldn't make out. Then I clearly heard him tell Todd to pause the game and come talk to me. "No, I'm winning," Todd whined. I heard some more mumbled words from Dell, and then another voice appeared on the phone. "Hey, Mom, Todd said unhappily. I'm winning by. The phone fell to the floor, and I heard Melissa pick it up again. Daddy's very busy with dinner, Mom, she said. He said he'd call you later when the kids, I think he means us, went to bed. How long will you be gone? Until Aunt May gets better, I said. Okay, bye, she said and hung up. He's good, isn't he? May asked behind me. May, I'm sure you won't believe this because you don't love him, but he only lied to the children for their own good, and maybe mine too. What would you like him to tell them? Maybe he should have said, Mom left because she was very bad and destroyed our family with her lies. Is that what you wanted him to tell them? I think in your mind he must be trying to poison my children against me. He should be trying to make sure they know he was the good guy and I was the wicked witch, right? I asked. Junie, take it easy, she said. I didn't say anything bad about him. I was just making a comment about what he did. When I said he was good, I meant it. I have friends who are divorced or separated, and it seems like all they do is constantly try to outdo each other with their kids. Not only does he not play the game, but he does everything possible so that you can talk to them. I'm willing to bet he even arranges for the kids to visit you. He does everything to keep them fed and plays with them. He also supports you in their lives. He didn't wait for you to call and beg to talk to them. He tries to do the best for them. I just wanted to give him some recognition. Of course, he tries to do the best for them. He loves them. He's their father, I spat. Junie, there are a lot of men in the world who are fathers of children, she said. There are not many who really love their children, but your husband clearly loves his children. And Junie, he loves you too. I don't know why I haven't seen this before. May. Nothing changed over the weekend. My sister slept in the second bedroom of my apartment. I talked to her whenever I could, but I couldn't get her to tell me what was going on. She called him 20 times a day and left all sorts of messages. I hated eavesdropping on her, but I couldn't help her if I didn't know what was going on. All I understood was that she kept saying how sorry she was. Early on Sunday morning, my cell phone rang. At first, I thought it was one of the women I was dating, but then I recognized the number. May, I know that in your eyes, I probably don't deserve another favor so soon, and probably never, but I still ask. I think I even beg, he said. His voice was even and calm, but I felt sadness emanating from him in waves. What do you want, Dell? I asked. This was the first time I called him anything other than bastard or ward, since I only called him because I knew he didn't like it. Could you pretend to be sick for a couple of hours today? He asked, almost crying. I'd like to leave the kids with their mom for a couple of hours, and if they see you up, they'll start asking questions. I know that I am starting to accumulate favors and I have no right to ask for them, but I will do for you whatever you want in exchange. I'll mow your grass all summer or fix anything you need or... I couldn't let him continue. He broke my heart. The man literally begged me to let his children spend some time with their mother. My own sister, during the 2 days that she was with me, never worried about her children. She didn't need to. He handled everything perfectly. It's okay, I said. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for my sister. It sounded completely wrong. I said what I wanted to say, but not what I meant. I understand, he said. As long as my children are happy, it doesn't matter what you think of me. I'll bring them at noon. Still, thank you very much. I felt like I had just kicked a puppy. This man had such low self-esteem that he could crawl under the belly of a snake, but my poor wording made it seem like I still couldn't stand him. What I really meant was that it should have been my sister asking to spend time with her children. If someone was indebted to me for this, Junie would have to offer me something in return. I started right then to try to understand what I didn't like about Della. I guess I never really trusted him. From the first moment I saw him, I expected him to break Junie's heart and ruin her life. I think it was because Wardell Cleaver is an attractive man. He's a little shy and reserved, but he's the kind of guy who could, and I hate to say it about his sister, but he could find someone better. Better both in life and in love. I always considered my sister a good woman. She's cute, but not beautiful. She inherited more of our father's genes, and I inherited more of my mother's. I'm taller, have bigger breasts, and a slimmer figure. She is shorter and more pear-shaped. I just thought that Wardell saw Junie as just a fling and would leave as soon as he got bored. The more Junie talked about him, the more he occupied her heart, the more I expected her pain when he left her. Then it happened. I still remember my panic when my mother called me to tell me that Junie was pregnant. I didn't wait to hear the rest. I did what any big sister would do. I rushed to her, expecting her to be devastated. I burst into her apartment and found her not crying and broken, but literally glowing, looking at magazines and catalogs. "Focus on the baby, not that bastard," I said. "We will all help you, Junie. We don't need him. Fuck him." She looked at me like I was crazy. "Who do we not need?" she asked. I couldn't come to my senses. She had the biggest smile I've ever seen on her face. "The bastard who knocked you up," I spat. "Junie, these don't look like children's catalogs." "May, are you upset about something?" she asked. "Maybe I missed something. I thought you came to congratulate me and help me plan my wedding." "Wait, I know what's going on. You're upset because the eldest sister is supposed to get married first, right?" I nodded. "May, I don't have to get married. This is not the 18th century. But I'm still going to marry Dell, and doing it before the baby is born seems right. Will you forgive me?" I nodded again. It just didn't feel real. "May, I'm going to tell you a secret that no one knows, not even Dell. I'll tell you this because you're my sister, and I know you won't tell anyone. Just like I kept your secret since childhood." She implied that I liked girls. "May, Dell and I have been talking about this and planning our wedding almost from the moment we met. We have everything planned. We know how many children we will have and even their names. I screwed up that plan, and I'm not sure it was an accident. When we make love, something happens to me. I'm just losing myself. For the past few months, I've just imagined myself opening up to him when we made love. I imagined carrying his children. I think on some subconscious level I wanted to get pregnant, so I've missed more than a couple of pills in recent months. Maybe I just stopped taking them." I looked at her like she was crazy. I was sure that the wedding was just an excuse so that he could plan his escape and would disappear before her belly started to grow. I just couldn't imagine a guy like him settling down with my sister. There was also the fact that neither of them would be able to complete their studies to ensure success in their chosen fields. In the years to come, they would have to struggle to make ends meet. I just couldn't imagine him doing this for my short, chubby sister. "So how did he react when you told him?" I asked. "He was probably mad." "No, he immediately got down on one knee and asked me to marry him and spend the rest of my life with him," she beamed. "I didn't expect this. I think I just wanted him to accept the child normally. We know many couples who have children but are not married. I picked him up and fucked him so hard, I was so happy. If I hadn't already been pregnant, I definitely would have been at that time. The next day, he gave me the most beautiful engagement ring I had ever seen. It belonged to his mother, and he had been planning to give it to me since she died the year before. The only reason he didn't do it sooner was because of our plan. I was sure that the wedding would never take place, but it did. I think it was clear to everyone except me that they really loved each other. I gave their marriage 6 months. For years, I thought of something that could separate them. I thought he would cheat on her or beat her. This never happened. In fact, she was always so damn happy that I started to envy her. So when he called me a couple nights ago, I was angry from the moment I heard him ask me to come and get her. First of all, I don't hate my sister, I love her. But I was a little disappointed when I entered her house and saw her standing without a single mark on her body. It's not that I wanted to see her all bruised and beaten, but I expected it. Maybe I rewatched these movies on Lifetime or something like that. But now I was angry again, and not at him. I crossed the hallway and entered the guest room. "Junie, wake up," I screamed. "Get yourself in order. For God's sake, get yourself in order. Your children will be here soon." "What?" she asked sleepily. "Dell will make them breakfast. Don't worry." She turned over and tried to go back to sleep. "June Cleaver, get out of this bed," I screamed in her ear. Her eyes instantly opened. "Your husband will bring the children to visit you. You have to pretend that everything is fine, but I'm sick. If you look like you just laid there and cried and—" She opened her mouth to smile, and the stench of alcohol hit my nose. I almost got drunk just smelling her breath. No wonder she didn't wake up so easily. "So," I continued, "they will know something is wrong." She stood up and cleaned herself up. At exactly noon, there was a knock on the door. June opened the door, and her children ran into the room. I watched them through the crack in my bedroom door. The children looked good. They were clean and happy. Melissa's hair was braided in what was known as a daddy hairstyle. But he tried, and it turned out well. Melissa handed June the envelope, and my heart sank. I was sure it was a list of demands, or, worse, divorce papers. What kind of bastard forces his own child to serve his mom with divorce papers? Melissa opened the envelope, read it with a puzzled expression, and then slipped it under my door. These were not divorce papers, it was just a note. "Around 1 p.m., please take the children to the park or for a walk around the block. Please keep them away for at least 15 minutes. I started to wonder what he was up to. As the minutes ticked down on the clock, I noticed that she was not moving. A few minutes after the hour, she almost ran to the door. She opened it and saw him standing with a large box. Several suitcases stood next to his feet. The look on his face was a complete surprise when he saw her. I was sure that June had stayed in the apartment on purpose. The look on my sister's face was one of pure joy as she reached for it. I saw that he was angry, but he kept his face neutral. She knocked the box out of his hands, and it fell to the floor, spilling the contents. She hugged him, and I wondered why he didn't push her away. When I saw that he had tears in his eyes, I realized that the only reason he didn't push her away was because their children were in the room. My own sister used her children as a shield to take advantage of her husband. It was hard for me to believe that she would do this. The only word that came to my mind to describe my sister at that moment was bitch. "I miss you so much, honey," she whispered. "Do you miss me?" "Very much," he replied. And damn it, he wasn't lying. It was literally oozing from his every pore. Poor guy. No matter how angry he was with her, he loved her to pieces. He was also in a huge amount of pain, and June made the most of this scene. Then she went even lower. "May is feeling a little better, dear," she grinned. "If you and the children want me to come back." "Ah!" I screamed as loud as I could. "June, I need my medicine now. The pain gets worse. Oh, Junie, please help me." I know I sounded like an old Southern woman, but it worked. June came into the room and was angry. Even when she looked at me with hatred, we heard his voice. "June, I'm going to the grocery store. I'll be back for the kids at 4. And he left. "What the hell are you doing?" she hissed at me angrily. "Do you think I want to stay here forever? Are you so damn lonely that you want to keep me here?" She turned and left the room, slamming the door loudly. I opened the door and watched again. My sister was very angry. She turned on the TV and ignored her children for the next 2 hours. Half an hour before Wardell was due to return for the children, she pulled them back onto the couch and began talking to them. "Melissa, don't you want Mommy to come home?" she asked. "Probably," my niece replied. "But what I really want is a TV like this. Aunt May has all the cool channels." "I'll buy you a TV," June hissed. "But I need you to start telling your dad that you want me to come home. You need to tell him about it every time you think about it. And you too, Todd." "What?" asked Todd. "Tell your dad you want Mommy to come home," she said. "For what?" he asked. "Because I said so," she spat. "Okay," he said. When Wardell came back for the kids, he was smarter. He knocked on the door and immediately stepped aside. June walked to the door and looked around, but he was standing at the end of the corridor, halfway to the next apartment. Melissa, Todd were playing hide and seek. "Kiss your mother and come look for me," he said. "Bye," Todd said, running out of the apartment and looking for his father's voice. Melissa hugged her mom and then ran towards them. A few seconds later, I heard Wardell shout, "Boo," and then the sound of the three laughing as June closed the door. I came out of my room and just looked at her. I wondered what happened to my sister. What made her behave this way? "Thank you very much," she told me sarcastically as she left the room. "Who were you going to be? Tyrannosaurus Rex or a damn pirate? Why did you do this? I could already be home with my family." "Thank you, sister," she said sarcastically. "I think I had what they call compassion," I said calmly. "I saw someone who was already in pain, who was being tortured, and I tried to help." "Why did you do this?" she asked. "Why do you stick your nose where it's not needed and you're not asked to? As far as I remember, you can't stand Dell." "You know, maybe I was wrong about that," I said. "I don't really like men in general, and I was sure he would hurt you eventually, but I'm starting to see this situation a little differently." "I don't need you to see this situation at all," she said. "You're not in it. It's none of your business." "What happened, Junie?" I asked. "What did you do to jeopardize your marriage?" "I don't want to talk about it," she said. She closed the door of her room. I went into the living room and looked at the box and suitcases. He brought her everything she needed to make her feel comfortable. He brought 2 suitcases with clothes. He brought her favorite robe and nightwear. He brought all her feminine accessories and the book she was reading. He brought this stupid fluffy blanket and even her favorite slippers. There were also several items that appeared to have just been purchased from a store. Later that evening, she knocked on my door. "May," I started. "Do you have any pads?" she asked. "Use yours," I said. "I didn't take it with me," she barked. "Damn it, June, you didn't even bother to look among all those things he packed for you?" I asked loudly. "I don't care about any of that crap," she said. "All I want is my husband back." "June, he put together everything he could think of to make you comfortable and happy," I said. "He even brought your stupid blanket and a box of that same raspberry cocoa you love. So you have pads and tampons too." "I don't think he put his hands in there, did he?" she asked. "Because that's what I need most." "June, I'm no psychologist, but I don't think making him angry and trying to trick him into getting you back is not the best way to get what you want. You need to give him a few days to calm down, and then sit down and talk to him. You both love each other. This doesn't go away overnight. Just be patient." The next morning, I got up early. June had been moaning all night, and I couldn't figure out if it was because of her period or how much she missed her husband. I knew Dell worked as some kind of manager at a manufacturing plant on the outskirts of town. From all the times June complained that Dell's lunch was from 10 to 11, and hers from 11 to 12, and on the other side of town, I knew when to get there. At exactly 10 o'clock, I parked in the visitors area at the plant. I went to the security booth and told the guard who I came to see. "I know what I look like, and I know that men do really stupid things to try to impress me. But this guy exceeded all expectations. He probably thought I was stupid too." He looked across the parking lot, spotted Dell's aging Mustang, and then smiled at me again. "According to my data," he said, smiling at me, "he is here." I walked into the plant and asked the first person I met if he knew where Dell was. "He's usually in the cafeteria, but today he is clearly not himself. I bet he's in the office, the manager's share. Go straight down the hall and turn," he said. I looked around, trying to figure out which way to turn, but he put on his headphones and left. I walked down the corridor and suddenly realized you could only turn in one direction. The office was only a few feet after the turn. I knocked and opened the door. He was the only person in the room, and his head was lying on the table. "It's not that bad," I said. He raised his head and saw me. I saw a lot of things on his face. First of all, I saw anxiety and confusion. "Is she okay?" he asked. "No, it's not okay," I said. "I'll take my jacket," he said, grabbing his keys from the table. "I just wanted to say that she misses you," I said. "But if you're so worried about her, why don't you want her to come home?" "For what? So she can keep laughing at me," he said. I was puzzled. "Why will she laugh at you?" I asked. "She didn't tell you what all this was about?" he asked. No, she doesn't say a word, I said. You'll have to ask her, he said. I didn't want to do this, but I was tired of being on the sidelines. I couldn't help them if they didn't tell me anything. Dell, you owe me a favor, I said. I demand it. What are you worried about? I'm family. I will not go and make your affairs public. But it will look like I'm trying to make her look bad, he said. I couldn't believe him. Most people would worry about putting themselves in the best light. He was, as usual, worried about my sister. Just tell me what happened, I sighed. When he told me, my eyes widened and I got angry. I was angry at both of them. I was angry at my stupid sister for leaving the kids home alone to go to a stupid college party. But I was also angry at Dell for not realizing that she had been drugged and taken advantage of. It's not her fault, I said. She was stupid to put herself in a position where this could happen to her, but you have to understand that she is the victim here. He looked at me as if I had just fallen from a tree of stupidity. I know that, he said. I was just waiting for her to trust me and tell me about it. But it hurt to realize that the person I loved more than anything in the world didn't trust me. Then what's the matter? I asked. If I was shocked the first time, what he said to me next left me dumbfounded, and so was he, as he was in tears before he finished speaking. Why did she do that? I asked. I just couldn't believe June's stupidity. Did you ask her why she did it? Too much happened after that, he said. What else happened? I asked. He told me everything that happened before I picked up my niece and nephew from school. All this time I thought I took the kids so June and Dell could enjoy each other a little during the day. I sat there and shook my head. Dell, you need to talk to her. Don't you at least want to know why this happened? I asked. I already know, he said. She's tired of me. I no longer sound in her ears. Once she tasted those young students, everything between us was over. I started laughing until I realized that he didn't understand. He didn't laugh. He truly believed that what he said was true. I'll try to arrange a meeting for you, I said. Could you give her this card? He said. He handed me a business card. I looked at it, and it was a business card from a legal aid service. Dell, why does she need this? I asked. The guy I talked to said that since we don't make a lot of money, we could probably get a divorce ourselves, he said quietly. Dell, are you serious? I asked. He simply nodded his head. But why? I asked. She clearly doesn't need me anymore, he said. And if someone finds out that I forgave her after what she did, that would be bad enough. But if they ever find out that I forgave her after she cheated on me twice, I won't be able to hold my head up anywhere. I won't have any pride left. I love her, always will, but if she's so tired of me that she's looking for sex with other men, letting her go is the best possible scenario for both of us. Dell, I'll call you later, I said. I want you to answer the damn phone, okay? He simply nodded. When I left the room, I thought about going home and spanking my stupid sister. He said what? June yelled at me an hour later. When did you talk to him? He's gone completely crazy. I just looked at her. Junie, men are strange creatures, I said. You two need to talk. Oh, he wanted me to give it to you. I handed her the card, and she looked at it strangely. Why do I need it? She asked. He said since you don't have a lot of money, you could do it through one of those DIY services, I told her. She looked at me as if I had done something incredibly stupid, and then tore the card in half in anger. She tore the two halves into 4 pieces and sat down at my dining room table. For the next 10 minutes, she didn't speak. She just kept tearing the card into smaller and smaller pieces. When the pieces became too small to tear, she gathered them in her hand and threw them into the ashtray. She then burned all the pieces until only ash remained. She poured water over the ashes, dissolved them, and then poured them into the toilet and flushed them. When I looked into her eyes, I saw that my sister had gone crazy. There's no scenario where Dell and I don't end up together, she said calmly, and there will be no damn divorces in this family. I will do whatever it takes to keep us together. I didn't like the look in her eyes at all. Dell. Both June and I ended up taking the next day off and meeting at our house. Her sister was also there. I think someone had to make sure we didn't kill each other. In the end, it turned out that it was very good that she was there because she guided the conversation. When I opened the door, anger, pain, and excitement from her appearance alternately covered me. She styled it, and her hair looked absolutely beautiful. She also put on makeup, and her face looked really beautiful. She wore a simple white blouse that was undone with 3 buttons, barely hinting at the cleavage she didn't have, but also showing a bit of her bra. The effect was so subtle that she didn't look vulgar, but seductive enough to make you keep watching, hoping to see a little more. Below, she has already deceived. She was wearing a long, tight black skirt that accentuated every curve of her curvaceous ass. The skirt was so tight that you could see her ass swaying with every step. I noticed she was either wearing a tiny thong or no panties. Since she was still on her period, I wondered what exactly she was wearing under her skirt. I wanted to remain professional and distant, but seeing her dressed like that just made me angry. I guess you're trying to find your next husband among those guys you work with, huh? I blurted out and immediately regretted it. May looked at me as if there was something wrong with me. Dell, are you angry about something? She asked. The whole purpose of this meeting is for you two to start talking to each other, so if you need to say something, say it. Sorry, I said. I didn't mean it, it just came out. I think I'm still in shock about it all. I shouldn't have said that. It's not my business anymore. What the hell do you mean it's none of your business anymore? June exploded. Dell, something is wrong with you. I didn't go to work dressed like this. I left work a couple of hours later and went to get my hair and makeup done. Then I returned home and changed clothes. All this is just for you. You know I don't like it when anyone other than you looks at my ass. This is a skirt I would never wear anywhere without something to cover it up. Are you crazy? Okay, we didn't come here to fight, May interjected. And after what just happened, I don't think you two are ready to talk. So let's do it differently. June, you will be the first to speak. This is your opportunity to tell Dell your side of what happened and what you want. Dell, don't interrupt her, just listen. Then you can ask her questions and challenge her opinions. Then it will be your turn. Dell, June began, I love you. I can't say this enough. If you only knew how often I think about you every day, it would probably frighten you. I love our life together, and I'm not proud of what happened, but it's not something we can't get over. I'm so sorry this happened, and it will never happen again. As for the first time, you know that you and I have a rather unusual sexual attraction. We are perfect for each other, which from what I've read doesn't happen often. Usually one of the partners has a stronger desire, or one of them needs more. We are perfect for each other. Anyway, you already know what happened to me the first time, but I want you to understand why it happened. You worked a double shift, and it was Thursday, Dell. Thursdays are my evenings just as Mondays are yours. I was at work all day, looking forward to a night of teasing, caresses, and long, slow lovemaking. I waited all day for this, and when I got home, I was as excited as a goat in mating season. I didn't mind you working longer, Dell. I know we need the money, but I wanted you so much that I was getting very horny just thinking about it. When the neighbors started playing music, I realized that they were having another party. After I put the kids to bed, I decided to visit them for a while, have one cocktail, and go home. They've always had a bar, but we both know they sometimes spike the drinks at the bar. I didn't think they would do this to me when there were so many young, attractive girls around, but I didn't want to take the risk. So I took a glass of punch. I intended to drink this glass of punch and go home and prepare for your arrival. And you already know what happened. When I came to my senses, 3 of them were on top of me. I didn't care. I just pushed them away, got dressed, and went home. But you were already there. Darling, I didn't mean to deceive you or lie to you. I didn't want to hide the truth from you, and despite what you think, I really trust you. I was just ashamed. I just wanted to forget it and move on with our lives. I didn't want to ruin everything we had over something I never asked for or wanted. And Dell, whether you like it or not, men react strangely to these things. And you are especially bad in this regard. I knew if I told you what happened it would cause problems. And I wasn't afraid of problems between us and these guys. I was afraid of problems between us. That's why I didn't tell you. You hurt me badly that night, Dell. You have to understand, I wanted love and affection from the person I love. Instead, I was drugged and taken advantage of. These guys meant nothing to me. Hell, they didn't even know what they were doing. I didn't like it, I don't remember what happened at all, and as soon as I came to my senses, I pushed them away and went home. All I needed was for you to hold me, and it would all go away. But for the first time since we met, you didn't even want to touch me. You treated me like I was infected. We went from you not being able to keep your hands to yourself to you treating me like trash. Quick question, Dell. When was the last time you grabbed my ass? I shrugged. It was the morning when all this trouble started, right before you left for work. I kissed you goodbye. A couple of seconds after that, you dropped your hands from my sides and started groping me while the kids were in the kitchen eating their breakfast. We were still in our bedroom, and you lifted my skirt and started kneading my ass. You turned me on and were about to lay me down on the bed. You had just taken my panties off, and despite the makeup or anything, I was going to let you take me. I never said no to you. The only thing that stopped us then was when your daughter called us from the kitchen to tell us that Todd had spilled his cereal. I spent the whole day wishing for you to finish what you started. But when you got into bed with me, you just turned away and went to sleep. I knew then that something was wrong between us, but I had no idea that you knew what happened and were waiting for me to tell you about it. Dell, for the last 10 years, you and I have been doing something sexual or romantic almost every damn night. I never get tired of you. I've never been tired of you, and despite what you told May, I have no desire for any man but you. What happened the second time was partly your fault. You know our history, and you know that if you just cut me off from you, I would become irritable. I'm a healthy woman, and I need sex. So after a month went by without it, I was just climbing the wall. I always want you. I'm not proud of it, but I invited this boy. And I'm also not proud of why I did it, but I was desperate. I needed my husband, and I wanted you so badly that the lines between right and wrong blurred. He had a bottle of the same stuff they pumped me with, and he told me it would work on you too. I was sure that if I had you again, you would never leave again. That's why I had to get this vial of the substance. It was a mistake, pure and simple. I was on drugs and in despair. But I know that if you forgive me, we can get through this. I just looked at her. You weren't medicated the second time, I said. Yes, it was, she insisted. It was a different remedy, but it was even more effective. I don't remember it being in the police report, I said. The drug I was on is called Dell, she said. You got me hooked on him, and then you left me. I was in withdrawal. Then you should probably just tell me the truth, I said. I loved you from the moment I first saw you and would never blame you for what happened the first time. But June, you covered it up and lied, ruining our marriage. You made it so that there is no longer trust between us. It's very difficult to get it back. We were already on the brink, and when you brought that freak into my house to sleep with him, it killed any chance of our reconciliation. Dell, I never intended to sleep with him. It just happened, she sobbed. You must understand. June, don't you think handjobs are sex? I asked. No, Dell, I don't think so, she answered, trembling. We both knew she was lying. So you don't mind if I just lift up your sister's skirt and satisfy her? I asked. My sister doesn't like men, Dell, so she'll never let you do that, she smirked. I turned to May and apologized to her. I'm really sorry, I didn't know, I said. She gave June a very angry look. Okay, don't worry about it, she said. Now that I know your rules, there are many women at work that I will help. Dell, if you touch any of these bitches at work, I will beat them to a pulp, June screamed. Why? I asked. Because you're mine, stupid, she hissed. You have no right to do anything with anyone but me. I love you. Funny, I felt the same way about you, June, I said, only you did it behind my back. She lowered her eyes and could not look me in the face. May I start my turn now? I asked politely. She nodded, but was still angry at June for exposing her. May, before I start, I need to tell you something. I probably won't have the opportunity after June hears what I have to say. She turned and looked at me. June told me something that is none of my business, but I want you to know that no one will ever find out about it from me, ever. I promise. She simply nodded, and some of her anger seemed to go away. June, I'm sorry. I didn't expect this. Every thought, every idea, every plan I made involved the two of us growing old together. But this just can't happen anymore. As you already know, neither of us make much money, but I filled out one of those online divorce forms. We need to sit down together and finalize the paperwork this weekend after we get paid. I expected her to cry. I was ready for this. I was ready for her to call me names or even scream. I was hoping we could just discuss this calmly, but I wasn't prepared for her to just lean back and laugh in my face. "Fuck you, Dell," she said. "You and I are in this until the end. I need you more than air. There is no way for us to get divorced. You can fill out all the paperwork you want. This won't happen. You always forget that I work for a law firm, and a very large one. I print legal documents and papers every day. I am also friends with at least 10 lawyers. While you are filling out the online forms, I will have the best damn lawyers in the state advising me and ensuring that this divorce never happens. I will work to block this divorce and drag it out every moment when I am not doing something else. I have a lot more free time than you do, darling, and while you're working your ass off taking care of the kids and the house, I'll be working to prevent this divorce from happening. I know almost every judge in the court system and will use every dirty trick I have. And while the divorce goes on and on and on, your anger will pass and you will remember what it all means. You love me, Dell, and you know it. Every fiber of your being responds to me and yearns for me. You should have seen your face when I walked in here in that skirt. You were so jealous just thinking about someone else seeing me in it. It was crazy. And when you realized that I put it on just for you, your anger turned to lust. You still want me. If my sister weren't here, period or not, we'd be having sex on this table right now, and you know it. You won't last even a month. I love you, Dell, no one else. There are no other men in my life, in my heart, or in my bed. What happened was just a couple of very bad decisions on my part. I said I was sorry. Let's finish this stupid thing and get back to our lives. Thanks for trying to help us, May, I said. I need to go pick up my kids now. June, where should I send the papers? Stick them up your ass, Dell, she grinned, because that's where the crap goes and I won't sign them. She then stood up and she and May left. Over the next few days, the situation worsened greatly. June called me every day and left messages telling me how much she loved me and that she was doing this for the sake of our family and our marriage. My legal documents were returned to me unsigned along with a long letter, notarized, stating that I had filled them out incorrectly and were therefore invalid. There was a sheet with instructions on how to fill them out correctly. When I returned to legal aid and got help filling out the paperwork, I was served a subpoena giving June 30 days before I could send her the paperwork again. I was also told that the documents would have to be delivered or served by a court official, which with all my bills I simply couldn't afford. Then I received a letter from the court ordering me to go to marriage counseling to try to save the marriage. June had several lawyers who dealt exclusively with divorce cases and helped her with her case. Since they were a team, none of them spent much time, but they easily outclassed me and my free lawyer. We were simply losing on all fronts. June used the counseling sessions as a chance to get me to talk to her. I could barely afford to pay my share of the consultation costs and still buy groceries. This took more than a month and was unsuccessful. In the end, June still wanted us to stay together, and I still wanted a divorce. She won several points in these consultations. One of the methods the doctor used was to make us answer questions under a polygraph. This cunning bastard also cheated. He asked 2 questions that June and her damn lawyers used against me. He asked me if I loved her. I admitted that I did, and he included it in his report. He also asked me if I wanted to stay married to her. I said no, and he caught me in a lie. After he filed his report in court, which June's lawyer friends paid for because I couldn't afford it, the judge ordered an additional 30-day cooling-off period. Then I faced another losing battle. June moved back into the house. I had no legal basis or reason to prohibit her from entering her own home. I was preparing to move myself and found that I couldn't. I found out about this in an unpleasant way. June brought one of her lawyers home and explained to me that if I moved out, it could be considered abandonment of the marital home and my children. If I was hoping for custody or even extensive visitation rights, such a move was not in my best interest. I called my free lawyer, and he agreed. High-ranking lawyer Jun simply grinned as if we were old friends, and he had just crushed me at chess. "Are you sleeping with her too?" I asked. He clearly didn't like it. He got very angry. He then made a phone call, and the same police guy who did our polygraph tests earlier came to my house. He connected the smug lawyer to the machine and allowed me to ask him my questions. As far as this man knew, neither he nor any of the other lawyers had a sexual relationship with June. After I apologized to him, he took me to a bar and explained everything to me. June worked for their firm and was a loyal and dedicated employee for almost 10 years. They all loved her and were willing to do anything to support her dream. For 10 years, they listened to June talk about me as if I were the sun that shone for her, and they wanted her to stay happy, so they were willing to fight to the end. 10 or 12 top lawyers, each spending 15 or 20 minutes a day on June's case, were like one extremely competent full-time specialist. I tried to compete with that by having a 5-minute consultation with a free lawyer who not only didn't specialize in divorce law, but wasn't even in the bottom half of his law school class. He also explained to me that it is very beneficial for a lawyer to spend part of his time doing pro bono work, and that's what June's friends did. I received such clarification sessions with different lawyers several times a week. They all came to tell me that what I was about to do was stupid and what June would do in response. I had just returned from my pro bono lawyer when I walked into the house and saw June preparing dinner. I just shrugged and sat down at the kitchen table. While watching her cook, I said nothing. I looked at my children, who were playing and happy, and I remembered what both my free lawyer and June's lawyer, who charges $500 an hour, told me. I was fighting a fight that I didn't have the money or resources to win. The last 2 weeks of trying to pay off a consultation bill that June's friends had paid her half of had left me barely able to pay minimum bills and even cutting back on groceries. I made sure the kids had everything they needed and their favorite snacks, but I didn't allow myself any beer or even soda. I looked at the new American Muscle catalog and didn't even dare open it. I was so broke that I couldn't even afford to ship it back, let alone order any parts for my Mustang. Both lawyers also told me that despite my best efforts, the children were suffering from the divorce. Maybe not physically, but emotionally they lack the stability they deserve. Then I realized what I had to do. With a lump in my throat, I realized that I would have to give up. I watched June humming as she cooked. She seemed happy. I knew she already understood what the lawyers told me and had no problem using the happiness and well-being of our children against me if it would help her get her way. "You win," I said quietly. My voice was barely louder than a whisper, but she heard. She turned to me with the biggest smile I'd seen in a long time and nodded. To her credit, she was smart enough not to try to approach me or touch me. She just gave me a slight nod and went back to cooking. But for the rest of the evening, there was a special lightness in her movements. And by dinner, I noticed that there were no traces of panties visible on her skirt, and the bra under her blouse had also disappeared. As usual, I put the kids to bed after reading their favorite story. I sat in their room for a while in the dark, thinking everything over. I realized that June and her lawyer friends would consider this a victory, and probably, on paper, I had no chance. They had all the advantages, and I had all the weaknesses. There was never any doubt about how it would all end, but it was difficult for me to consider this a defeat. I simply couldn't use my children's innocence and well-being as a bargaining chip. June didn't win. I simply gave up this battle, but not the war. This was a war that I could not win by numbers or power, so I decided to fight a long guerrilla war, and I knew it would be long. With Melissa turning 9 soon and Todd turning 7 next week, I assumed the war would last about 10 years. A few minutes later, I closed the door quietly so as not to wake the children and saw June's beaming face. "I'm so glad all this madness is over," she said. "Have you seen how happy they are that we are all together again?" "That's why I did what I did," I replied sadly. She looked at me and wiped my eyes. "I don't understand, Dell," she said. "This is a joyful time. Our family is together again. Besides," she added, moving so close to me that her chest was slamming into mine, "if he behaves right, I know someone could get some sex tonight." "I thought all those guys were in jail," I said, turning around and walking into the bedroom. I pulled out my favorite old t-shirt from my drawer, a robe, and a pair of boxers, and headed to the bathroom to shower before bed. While I was in the shower, I heard the bathroom door open. I grabbed the shower door handle and held it. After a few seconds, she tried to open the door, but could not. She laughed and left. When I got out of the shower, I couldn't find my t-shirt. Apparently, I dropped it somewhere on the way to the bathroom. I went back to the bedroom to get another t-shirt and saw June wearing mine. She got out of bed and walked towards me. "If you want your t-shirt, you just have to take it off me," she said. "Here, I'll help." She lifted her t-shirt over her head and stood naked in front of me. "Damn," she said. "You obviously want this t-shirt, or what's in it." I turned away and took another t-shirt from the drawer. "Dell, where are you going?" she asked loudly. "Our house has 3 bedrooms. Then both of our children were still sleeping in the same room. The last bedroom was their playroom until they were old enough to have separate rooms. This was the first night I slept on the couch, and June was very unhappy about it. She watched me leave the bedroom, confident that I would return after a while. It was almost midnight when she turned on the living room light and found me on the couch, covered with a blanket. "Why are you sleeping here?" she asked. "Listen, June, you win," I said. "I refuse the divorce. You preserve what's left of our marriage. But this is an empty victory. Neither of us can afford to continue with the divorce, and neither of us can afford to live anywhere else. But that doesn't mean I have to completely give up my pride. I won't sleep with a woman who cheated on me." "Dell, I've been taken advantage of," she hissed. "When will you finally understand this?" "I've already told you several times. I don't blame you for this," I said. "But you sat there on that last day and calmly talked with the one you called your abuser. This raises serious doubts about your story. Does this really sound like the behavior of someone who has experienced trauma? And then, to get what you wanted, you invited him. Yes, invited him to our house to have sex with him." She nodded her head furiously. "Please remember, June, I saw it," I said. "Did he ask you to please him, or did you just do it because you wanted to?" She didn't answer. "So, pleasing another guy doesn't count as cheating either, right?" She didn't say a word. "After that, I don't remember you resisting when he knocked you over on your back on the same floor where our children play. But if you tell me that you resisted, I will believe you. It just wasn't visible, and I didn't hear you say no even once. I even thought you spread your legs for him, but then again, that's just how it looked to me." She began to cry. "Dell, none of this matters. We're back together, and we'll get through this. It'll just take time." "Well, while we have this time," I began, "for your own good, you should get tested for sexually transmitted diseases. These guys had everything that moved, so it's quite possible that you're walking around with a whole bunch of ailments. I'm sure whoever you sleep with next will be happy if you turn out clean." "What the hell do you mean?" she screamed. "June, turn down the volume," I hissed. "My children are sleeping." "Why are you treating me like some kind of prostitute?" she asked quietly. "You're not like that." "You mean I'm not the same as I used to be?" I said. "You changed everything. Do you know how a man feels when he sees the woman he loves more than life itself willingly having sex with another man? My heart broke that day, June, and I don't see how it can be put back together. You can force me to stay in this fake marriage, but it will never be the same." Our marriage is not fictitious, she hissed. We are married because we love each other. Can you look me in the eyes and tell me you don't love me? I didn't say anything. Deal, half the people who are married now can't stand each other. You and I are the whole world for each other. You already know that for the first time I had no control over what was happening. The second time I was so horny and I had been without it for so long that I didn't have much of a choice. You could have prevented this if... Don't try to blame it on me, I said. I tell you all the time that I don't blame you for the first time. How many times do I have to say this? But the first time was terrible, she said. The first time I was used by 3 men and... She paused and shook her head. I just don't understand. If you were not going to divorce me after the first time, then you probably understand that in the second case, there was certainly no reason for divorce. Dell, you haven't made love to me in over a month, and the first time, I interrupted. Wasn't the worst, June. I've seen both. The first time you were clearly unconscious. Yes, they used you. But you didn't take part in this. You just lay there while they did it. As you said, when you came to your senses, you pushed them away and went home. I was furious, June, but not with you. I was angry with them. I wanted to kick their asses. I wanted to hurt them all. But I couldn't do it until you came to me and told me what they did. But somehow it never happened, and I started to think that maybe you liked it. Or at least it didn't matter to you. It really damaged our relationship, June. It bothered me so much that I stopped having sex with you. Part of it was because I was sauce, and the other part was... What is sauce? She asked. Fear of syphilis, I chuckled. And the other part was that after seeing you being with 3 guys and not objecting to it, I just started to feel like you didn't belong with me anymore. From the first moment we met, I always felt that you belonged only to me. I lost that feeling when you didn't tell me what happened. Secrets don't help a marriage, June. They ruin it. Sorry, honey, she said. I'm still all yours. I think I just didn't see it that way, and you're a fool for seeing it that way. You said it yourself. I wasn't looking for this. These guys didn't have sex with me. They used me, and... That's why the second time was worse, I said. Because the first time you were lying on the bed, you passed out. But the second time you were conscious, you were alert, you were active. You wrapped your arms around him and pulled him towards you, just like you do to me. You started moving your hips and... Shut up, she shouted, covering her ears with her hands so as not to hear me. Just shut up. You don't understand anything. For some time, neither of us said a word. The only sound in the room was the sound of her silent crying. I understand that all this love you talk about doesn't mean a damn thing, I said. I understand that no matter how bad people talk about men, you, June, are worse. I've loved you for 10 fucking years. I met you. I married you. I took care of you. I made 2 children with you. And none of this matters. As soon as you get an itch between your legs, you will immediately find something to fill this emptiness and do whatever it takes to fill it. If that means drugging me with something that could kill me, then it doesn't matter, right, June? I mean, when exactly did you become a doctor? How did you know how much of this drug to give me or what it would do to me? You could have killed me, June. And in the end, you didn't even have to try to pump me up. The whole point is for you to get sex, right? Why not just sleep with the guy next door and be done with it? After you had sex with him, the drug wouldn't be important, right? No, you got it all wrong, she said. The glassy look in her eyes almost made me think she was having some sort of attack. Her speech became confused and manic. You're twisting everything around to make it seem like what I did was wrong, she said. June, we are married, and as you say, we love each other, right? Asked. Yes, she answered sharply. I already told you this. So we are married and love each other. Is it wrong for one of us to have sex with someone else? Wouldn't that be a violation of our marriage vows? I asked. Well, yes, in a narrow sense, but... She began. Okay, I was wrong, but I already told you that I was wrong, but... Dell, why don't you just go and sleep with some other woman, and then we'll be even, she said. Is this what you want me to do? I asked. No, she cried again. But if this is what it takes to put everything behind us and make us equal, I don't want to settle any scores, I said. You don't want to? She smiled. I wanted to get out of this, I hissed. But you didn't let me walk away with pride. You didn't let me get a divorce, and now we're stuck together. We can't afford a divorce. We simply do not have the money to maintain 2 houses and also take care of our children. So again, we're stuck together, June. But now it will no longer be a marriage of love between two people who want to be together. This will be a union of two people, one of whom does not want to be in it. So we will share the house, expenses, and responsibility for raising our children. But that's all we will share. We will not share a bed or anything other than simply existing, or should I say coexisting. But that's not what I want, she said. I don't want this. This is not. As Mick Jagger said, I said, you can't always get what you want. She slowly turned around and walked back to our bedroom with tears running down her face. Over time, I realized that June hoped that if we had enough time, I would survive all this. She thought that by living together, everything would be fine in the end. In a way, June was right. Everything was fine. I decided to look at things on the positive side. Even if I got a divorce, I doubt I would get custody of the children. I probably wouldn't have gotten our house either. But I still lived in the same house with my children. I saw them every day and became even more involved in their lives as they grew up. I coached sports teams for both of them. I participated in school events and trips. I helped them and their friends with their homework. In short, I was still a very involved father. The only requirement for these privileges was to live in the same house as June. Over the years, our relationship has had its ups and downs. Sometimes from the outside it seemed that we were no different from other married couples. The only people who noticed anything strange were those who knew us from the beginning. These people were shocked because it seemed like June and I had changed overnight. We went from someone who was constantly hugging and kissing, who couldn't keep our hands to ourselves, to a couple who barely spoke. At school events, such as plays or concerts, we both sometimes attended, but did not even sit together. It was even worse at home. I often ate with the children, and so did June, but we rarely sat at the same table together, and when we did, we both talked to the children, but not to each other. June's moods fluctuate like a sine wave graph. There were times when she did everything possible to get us back together. During these periods, she cooked my favorite dishes and tried to lure me back to bed. There were times when she gave up. During these periods, she was depressed and irritable. Very few people knew how bad our relationship was, and even fewer knew why. June told those few that it was all my fault, that our marriage was the way it was. She made some mistakes, and I just can't forgive them. After a few years, many of her friends suggested we divorce. They asked what was the point of both suffering. June became irritated at such suggestions and several times simply jumped up and walked away after yelling at the person. June was confident that we would overcome our difficulties. She told anyone who would listen that we were made for each other and that it might take time, but we would be together again. She had several theories about this. One of them was that because we had to spend so much time together raising children, over time the anger would go away and only love would remain. Her other theory was that when the kids left, it would be just the two of us, and the simple fact that most people band together to avoid loneliness would bring us closer together again. Another theory was that when we retired, we would be together again and everything would be the same as before, only stronger because we had been through the trials. June often said things like, "Anything worth having is worth waiting for." But she stopped saying this in my presence after the first time. We were at her sister's party. May invited us both separately. June arrived first, and I came later because I didn't want to disappoint May. When I arrived, I found May and gave her a nice bottle of wine as a thank you for the invitation, and then began to chat with the guests. I didn't approach June, and that caused a lot of whispering. Some of these people knew about the situation between us and began asking why we didn't just break up. "Great question," I replied sharply. "Anything worth having is worth waiting for," June retorted. "Except, apparently, sex for you," I said before my mind could kick in. I didn't want to embarrass June, but suddenly everyone understood why June and I weren't together and knew who did what. I think we both took it differently. In June's mind, her decision to block the divorce was a good thing. She found a way to continue living with me. She kept her family together, and we raised healthy and happy children. The only thing that bothered her was that I never forgave what she considered a minor incident, but she was confident that I would forgive. Over time, she became more and more confident that we would get back together. After all, I have never loved anyone but her. For me, I was like a prisoner. I lived one day at a time. Each new day brought me closer to the moment when the doors of my prison would open and I would be free to continue my life. I kept all aspects of my life outside the home separate from June. For example, when I was promoted to manager a year after the imprisonment began, I never told June. I got a raise and split my direct deposit so that the exact amount of my old salary went into my checking account and the rest went into a savings account that June didn't know about. We filed our taxes separately, so June didn't know how much I made. 3 years later, when I became plant manager, I did the same. My timing was excellent because as each day passed as my sentence neared its end, I learned that I was qualified for a soon-to-be vacated regional manager position, and I was his only candidate. I have to admit that over the years, as my children grew up, my love for June never seemed to wane. It sounds crazy, but I loved her as much as ever. I just couldn't be with her after what she did. Often it was this love that made me do things that I would never have done otherwise. When June was diagnosed with an ovarian cyst and was scheduled for surgery, we became a couple again overnight. I took a few days off to go to the hospital with her. I was there during the operation, and I stayed in the hospital with her every day after the operation. The cyst turned out to be non-cancerous, and June was expected to face only minor problems in her ability to have children. The doctor was very happy to tell us this, because June told him that we wanted at least one more child. He also told us on her last day in the hospital that since I was already 38 and June would soon be 40, if we were planning another child, we should do it as soon as possible. Of course, this made June smile. The doctor said June would have to be in bed for at least 10 days after returning home. He gave me a complete list of everything that needed to be done to ensure her quick recovery. During these 10 days, I even slept next to her in bed. Every morning after those 10 nights spent next to her, I woke up with her tight legs wrapped around me and her hands in my panties. I knew it wouldn't work. The doctor told June she couldn't have sex for at least a month after the surgery. When he gives the go-ahead, maybe a couple of days before, she whispered, I'll make sure you don't have the strength to walk for a while. I just smiled at her. As soon as June was allowed out of bed, I went back to sleep on the couch. She tried to convince me that she had relapsed, but a quick visit to the doctor proved that she was fine. There were other times over the years when June and I slept together. Every time she was sick, I took care of her. After all, I loved her, and she was the mother of my children. When I was sick, I never told her. We treated illness differently. June loved being sick. It seems to me that she was trying to catch a cold or flu in order to lure me into her bed. She truly believed that if we slept together, sooner or later, we would start having sex again and leave everything behind. I looked at it differently. I thought that if I was very kind to June, it would awaken in her the love she still had for me, and perhaps that love, or at least a simple feeling of guilt, would make her let me go. Either way, neither of us got what we wanted. As for sex, I didn't know what June was doing for a long time until a few months before Todd was supposed to leave for college. But I myself was content, busy with myself and fantasizing about June. Oddly enough, I still couldn't get her out of my head and couldn't free myself. By that time, I had already divided June into two personalities. There was the pre-cheating June that I loved with all my heart, and there was the cheating June that I needed to get rid of as quickly as possible. June was so desperate that she would do anything to tease me or excite me. If I took too long in the shower, June would go into the bathroom and look around the room for photos. Sometimes she undressed in front of me and went into the shower. I was just going out. The first few times Christmas came around were interesting too. I always bought June a couple of small, impersonal gifts. I bought her gifts because I didn't want to be rude, but I made them impersonal to let her know that this was not a gift from a husband to his beloved wife. These are simply polite exchanges between cohabitants to avoid disruption of harmony in the home. June, on the other hand, saved every penny to buy me nice gifts, as if she was trying to ransom me. I've never taken them. I would open them out of politeness and then return them to the store and put the money back in her wallet. She understood it the first time. The first time she thought that I didn't like her gift. After the second time, she demanded an explanation. I told her that she doesn't need to buy me gifts at all because it just won't achieve what she wants. In the third year, she found something I would take. I woke up and saw several gifts from June under the tree. I shook my head and she just smiled at me. When I opened the first gift, it was a box containing copies of my favorite photographs of June from our wedding album and a few from the years before the incidents, as we called them. The second box contained a set of very candid glamour photos of June that had been taken recently. She looked at my reaction. As my face darkened, she handed me the phone. May was on the other end. Dell, June knows how jealous you are of her, so don't be angry. I took the photos. So Merry Christmas, brother-in-law. The last box was even worse. It contained a DVD. There was a warning on the box not to watch this with children. The video was of June doing a series of solo performances, and at the end of each one, she told me that if I wanted the real thing, she was here at the end of the hallway. It seems that after this June, I became even more determined to get me back. She began to try to understand me more. She even asked why I didn't use new photos or videos. "Honey, I love that you love me so much and look at me like that," she said. "I just wanted to know why you don't like the video or the new photos. Are they too depraved?" "That's not the point," I answered immediately when she asked, but I didn't add anything. The next day, she needed to know and kept pestering me with questions. "It's the wrinkles or the fact that I've gained weight over the years, right?" she said. "You like the photos better when I'm younger and fresher, don't you?" She gave me no rest until I finally blurted out. "I just love those pictures of you as mine," I said. "I like those photos of you loving me." She went to her room and did not come out for several hours. When she returned, she took the new photos and videos and destroyed them. "This way you won't have to look at who I have become, a girl of easy virtue." One of the vivid memories of this time is that May, who never liked me, became one of my closest friends. She spent a lot of time trying to get June and me back together. She always told me, "Dell, you love my sister. Give her a chance and you can be happy again." There were many moments when I seriously thought about it, but then June would say or do something or just look at me in a way that made me angry at her again. Our daughter leaving for college was a big deal for us. June didn't know where the money to pay for her education came from. Melissa received a partial scholarship and planned to work to pay for her studies. I sent her enough money every month to keep her from working, but I persuaded her never to tell her mother where the money came from. Since there were always secrets between me and the children that June did not know, this was not a problem. I'm sure they had their own secrets from me. It's just part of life in prison. As the time came for Todd to leave, I began to develop my exit strategy, and June became increasingly nervous. The scene with which I began this ridiculous story illustrates the things she did to lure me back into her bed. The morning after her show, I was annoyed, but I didn't understand why. May came to my work and we talked. "So she tried to get you into bed again?" she asked. I simply nodded my head. "You would think that at her age, she would have given up by now," she laughed. I just looked at her strangely. "You can't be serious," May said. "You're still attached to her, aren't you? You wanted her last night, right?" I nodded. "Then, stupid, why didn't you just do it?" she asked tenderly. "She would be happy. You would be happy, and I would be happy for both of you. I don't think my sister understands how much you love her." "I was afraid," I said. "What the hell were you afraid of?" she asked. "She's your wife, for God's sake. You made 2 children. You wanted her. God knows she wanted you to want her. I just don't understand what you had to be afraid of. Well, first, before we get to the fear, I said, there is still anger. Don't talk nonsense, she said. You and I have already discussed anger over what she did. This was more than 10 years ago. Heck, these guys are probably dead or have long since forgotten the whole thing. I think only the three of us remember what happened. You promised me that you would let it go and judge June based on her last years. She still loves you, you know. You two are the most ridiculous people I know. She waits until you fall asleep and then goes into the living room and watches you sleep. I just smiled. You're blushing, she said. Over time, you don't seem to notice that her butt has gotten a little bigger and her belly is sticking out just as much as her breasts. Such things don't matter, I said. She's still the hottest woman on the planet to me. What about the cellulite on the back of her thighs or the wrinkles on her face? She asked. She's the most beautiful girl I know, I said. May simply grinned. So what kind of anger are you talking about? She asked. She hired an investigator to follow me, I said. Isn't it enough that she made me call off the divorce 10 years ago? But now that it's almost over, she's still trying to find something incriminating about me. This won't work anymore. Todd will leave in a couple of months, and then she won't be able to keep me. She'll just get the lawyers involved again, May grinned. She loves you too much to let you go. And it gets worse every time you take care of her when she's sick. I think she's getting sick on purpose so she can spend time with you. You're probably on medication, I said. Dell, she's had the flu 3 times in the last year, May laughed. And every time that happened, you slept in her bed and took care of her for at least a week. I think she was faking it the last 2 times. Besides, you know all she wants is to find a way to keep you. She loves you, fool, and we both know you're not cheating on her. So what difference does it make if she hired someone to spy on you? She's desperate. And please tell her to stop doing this. She doesn't have enough money for this. I wondered why she borrowed money from me this month. She has no savings and will not be eligible for a pension for another 25 years. She needs to start saving and investing instead of wasting money on private detectives who follow you. You're right about that, I said. Maybe I should hire my own detective to keep an eye on her. So tell me, why are you afraid? She asked. Well, I know June and I have been together for 20 years, but we haven't been intimate for the last 10 years, I began. It stopped because of sex. For me, the most important aspect of our relationship was not sex. Of course, we had a lot of sex, but what made us special was closeness and trust. I'm not sure if these things are still here. How can I be sure that if we are together, I will not feel like she is just a sex friend? If all we're going to do is just have sex, there's no point in us getting back together. I can get sex anywhere. I want my wife back. Your wife never left you, fool. You just stopped letting her show it, May said. No, I said. I have to do something to let her know that this is not a continuation of the marriage she destroyed. I want her to understand that this is a new start for both of us. If we put our heads together, we can come up with something great, she said. A month later, I was showing my son Todd how to operate the manual transmission in my Mustang. He'll take the car with him when he leaves for college in 3 weeks. Be careful with the clutch, son, and it will last you forever, I said. Dad, could you stay until I leave? He asked, looking at me. Toddy, you have a phone. You can call me at any time of the day or night. You will only be here for 3 weeks, and your sister will be there to show you around the campus. We will all meet for Thanksgiving at our new home in Florida. You can handle it. I know, Dad, he said sadly. I just don't want to think that you would. Before he could finish, June pulled into the driveway. She got out of the car and waved to us before rushing into the house. She noticed a large truck parked in front of our house, which was just starting to pull away when the door closed behind it. But she didn't pay much attention to the new Mustang GT parked on the street in front of the house next door. I followed her into the house and into the bathroom. The shower was running full blast when I opened the door. June, I began. Is that you, the love of my life? She asked. I just came to say goodbye, I said. Del, please tell me you're not going to work today, she said. Tomorrow is our fucking anniversary, and all week you promised that something special would happen. Can you wait until I get out of the damn shower so we can talk about this? You need to call someone to get someone else to take your shift so you can stay home with me. June, finish your shower, I said. We both know you need him, and we both know why. I just wanted to say goodbye. I left the house and hugged my son again. Then I got into the new Mustang. By the time I started the engine, June had managed to throw on her robe and step out onto the porch, still dripping water. I stepped on the gas the moment she screamed my name. My last look at her, as I left the tire tracks and turned around in front of our house, showed that she was no longer as beautiful as I had always thought. I think I looked at her through the glasses of love and saw beauty. Without these glasses, I saw an elderly, fat, wrinkled girl of easy virtue. June. When I drove up to the house, I wondered what my husband was doing at home. He and his son were outside playing with his Mustang. If I stay calm, I might be able to avoid trouble. I waved to them and hurried into the house. There was a lot of traffic in front of our house. Maybe this will take their attention away from me. I walked up the stairs, trying to remain calm. As soon as I entered the house, I immediately began taking off my clothes and throwing them into the laundry chute. Then I rushed to the bathroom and turned on the shower. She quickly took off the hand shower and began to wash herself. I have no idea why I did what I did today. It was probably logical to end on a good note. He didn't take it well, and perhaps I was very foolish to end things before I had any confidence in the future. But judging by the way things had been going lately, I was sure that I no longer needed him. Del has been talking to me over the last week. He didn't sleep with me, but I was sure things were better between us. Last night, when I cooked him dinner, he not only ate it, but also sat at the table with me and we talked. I was delighted by the way his eyes roamed over my body. After dinner, I showered as usual and put on my robe. I went back to check on Del, and we even talked a little. When I bent over in front of him, he looked at my breasts through the slit of my robe. This look, not shy, not hiding, caused me to tremble. When I returned to the bedroom, I felt his gaze on me. I leaned over to adjust my slippers just to see if he would look at me. Looking back quickly, I noticed him looking at my naked ass as the robe lifted from the bend. I wanted him so much. When I went to bed, I was overcome by the feeling that the man I love was looking at me again as a woman for the first time in so long that I didn't even want to think about it. I spread my legs under the sheet and moaned, imagining deeds between them. And when I do that, thinking about you, you act like I'm some kind of pervert, he said. Even in the dark, I could see him watching me from the doorway. This is different, I said. I was so ashamed that he caught me, but I was glad about it. I have no choice. I have to use my fantasies to get relief from what you're doing to me. You always had the choice to just come and take me whenever and however you wanted. If I had this opportunity, we would have at least 2 more children. It's going to be a very special day, he said. Perhaps there is something new in the air. I think something special will happen the day after tomorrow. And then he left, and I got all excited from his hints. This was last night. I couldn't help myself after his hints. I woke up this morning with fire between my legs. I was shocked to realize what had just happened. I didn't have to get up for another 2 hours to go to work. Even when I heard the sound of that loud car starting outside, tears rolled down my cheeks as I remembered his words and touched my forehead where his lips had just been. I didn't sleep. Del came into the bedroom and kissed my forehead. "Love you," he said, and he wasn't being sarcastic. "Love you too," I said to the emptiness in the room. I needed to get rid of a complication in my life that should never have happened. There was also the fact that if it was just another one of Del's games and I finished it, I might not find a replacement. As I got older, it became more and more difficult to find someone. Del might think I was beautiful, but no one else did. The afternoon session did nothing to put out my fire. In fact, it was a waste of time. Suddenly, I realized that everything he did was wrong. I realized then that all this time I was just putting band-aids on bullet wounds. No bandage will ever stop the bleeding, let alone remove a bullet. I stood in the shower feeling incredibly nervous, guilty, and disappointed. The shower water got too hot, and I needed to adjust it. Even as I reached for the shower handle, I heard Dell's voice. He entered the bathroom with me. This was another new thing, and I would have done anything to make sure it wasn't the last time, but I couldn't let him come near me until I was sure I was clean. "June," he said, and I wanted him as soon as I heard his voice. We'd been together for 20 damn years, and he could still send waves of pleasure through me just by saying my name. There are things that some people cannot pronounce. "Is that you, the love of my life?" I asked. "I just came to say goodbye," he said, and I got angry. Firstly, because if I had been more careful, I would not have been in this situation, and he and I could have done something. And secondly, because I was starting to feel like he was playing one of his fucking games with me. Then it dawned on me. If he got home early, it might be because he's going to work the night shift to relieve someone. Dell worked all these years in this hellhole without getting a promotion. After all his hints about tomorrow and what happened last night, I wanted him to stay home with me. I wanted my husband back. Fuck his job. "Dell, please tell me you're not going to work today," I said. "Tomorrow is our damn anniversary, and all week you promised that something special would happen. Can you wait a minute until I get out of the damn shower so we can talk about this? You need to call someone to take over your shift so you can stay home with me." "June, finish your shower," he said. "We both know you need this, and we both know why. I just wanted to say goodbye." I went into shock. I wondered what he meant. I hoped he didn't mean what I thought he meant. He couldn't really know why I needed that shower, could he? I didn't wash off the soap or scrub myself. I just grabbed my robe and ran out of the bathroom, leaving puddles of water on the floor behind me. I managed to pull on my robe just as I heard the sound of the car starting, louder and more powerful than Dell's Mustang. A newer, more aggressive Mustang was parked on the street in front of the house next door. He squealed tires, and the man behind the wheel made a U-turn and quickly drove away. I realized it was Dell. Was this his surprise for me? He bought another damn car. So what? Although I did wonder where he got the money for this. I'll have to ask him when he gets home. There were so many questions I wanted to ask him. Like, why did he just tell me he loved me when he left for work this morning, and now he suddenly says goodbye? Does it depend on the shift he works, or is it something else? "Mom, cover yourself, please." I heard my son's voice. I wrapped my robe tighter and returned to the house. Then I noticed that something was wrong in the house. It seemed like I had left something open or someone was here who shouldn't have been. I just felt the presence of strangers. But I was sure my son would have said something, or Dell, if they were having a party or something. I got back into the shower and rinsed off the soap. As I went into the bedroom to get dressed, I started thinking about what I should wear tomorrow. I had no idea because I didn't know if Dell's surprise would be at home or on the weekend. I think that's what made me realize that I was getting old, because I would rather stay at home and spend the evening with my husband than go to some expensive restaurant or something. But even if he just wanted to take me for a ride in his new car, I would be happy. I'd be happy to do anything with the cause. That hasn't changed. The phone ringing brought me out of my thoughts. I was in a good mood when I picked up the phone and said, "Hello?" "You stupid bitch," the caller screamed. The voice was so full of anger and hatred that I almost dropped the phone. "What the hell have you done?" she screamed again. I was about to hang up until I realized it was my sister calling. "May, why are you yelling at me?" I asked calmly. "Do you know how long I worked for him?" she screamed again. "All for you. Don't do anything. Just sit where you are. I'll be there in 5 minutes." I hung up and went back to thinking about what to wear. Then it dawned on me. The skirt and blouse outfit I wore when I tried to convince Dell not to divorce me would have been perfect. I knew it would light a fire within him. But a light jacket or coat to cover how tightly the skirt highlights my butt will make it suitable for going out. I haven't worn this skirt for 10 years. I was saving it for the cause. I found it in the back of my closet, and it still looked new. When I tried to put it on, I discovered that it no longer fit. I couldn't even pull the skirt over my hips, let alone button it. I thought it might be worth going to the mall to find a replacement. Before I could take off my skirt, my sister burst into the room. "So how is it?" she asked. "Well, I can't fit into this skirt." I started. She just looked at me and shook her head. "You know this is all your fault, right?" she asked. "I really can't help you this time. This time there are no strange circumstances and no college students to pin the blame on. None of your lawyer friends can help you." I felt my heart clench in my chest and looked at her. "What are you talking about, May?" I asked. "June, are you stupid or what?" she asked. "You didn't even notice it, did you?" "Didn't notice what?" I asked. "You must have been in a hurry when you got home not to notice it," she said. "I needed to take a shower," I said.
Yeah, I know.
She chuckled, shaking her head. I wondered why everyone kept saying that. "Let's go to the dining room," she said. I followed her into the dining room and noticed that the table had been cleared. All the napkins were neatly folded on the sideboard. The only thing on the table was a stack of papers. On top of this stack was a small object that seemed to have been placed there to hold the papers. I wondered if this was a surprise from Dell. "That's not what he was going to do for you tomorrow," she spat. As I approached the table, I noticed that on top of the stack was a ring. Then I realized it was Dell's wedding ring, and my heart started pounding in my chest. I turned to my sister for an explanation. "He really works fast," she said. "What do you mean?" I asked. "For the last 3 weeks, Dell and I have been planning what he's going to do to win you back," she said sadly. "He bought you a new engagement ring, and you were to spend the next few days renewing your marriage vows. He didn't want to just come home and sleep with you because you meant so much more to him. He wanted to make a grand romantic gesture to signify that your old marriage was over and all its problems and quirks were over. All the poor guy wanted was a chance to start over with the woman he loved so madly." "Why was it stupid to love him?" I asked. "June, in all these years that you were in this strange marriage, but not in marriage, Dell never cheated on you. He loved you. About a month ago, he came home, still angry at you, and told you a lie about stopping by to sleep with some woman. You immediately laughed and told him what he was actually doing. We all know that he will never cheat on you. But after you hired lawyers to get him to call off the divorce, finding out you hired a private detective to follow him made him angry. I treated him pretty badly too," she said. "I recorded him talking about you. I saw my sister take out her phone. She pressed a button, and I heard her talking to Dell." "You're blushing," May said. "Over time, you don't seem to notice that her butt has gotten a little bigger and her belly is sticking out just as much as her breasts." "Things like that don't matter," Dell said. "She's still the hottest woman on the planet to me." "What about the cellulite on the back of her thighs or the wrinkles on her face?" May asked. "She's the most beautiful girl I know," Dell said. "That's what he thought of you, stupid. He decided to try to win you back. He forgot about the private investigator he hired while we were planning his grand seduction. You should see the ring, it's beautiful. It seems he received a report from the detective this morning and learned that he was the only one who remained faithful in the last 10 years. "No!" I screamed. I pulled up the file and saw photos of my most recent encounters, as well as dates, times, and more information than I thought possible about all the men I'd approached over the years when my need for sex became so strong that I couldn't have it. Withstand. "He must understand," I said. "It was just sex. I—" "Leave it alone, stupid," she said. "You lost him. He left this time." "To hell with all this," I said. "I stopped him from divorcing me last time, and I will do it again." The only thing I heard then was my sister's laughter. "What the hell is so funny?" I asked. "Do you see any divorce papers here?" she asked. I looked at the stack. There was only the detective's report and the ring. I looked at her. Somehow my sister, who didn't even like men, knew more about my husband than I did. "He doesn't need a divorce," she said. The only reason he tried to get a divorce last time was because he needed to use legal channels to make sure he could see his children. The kids are adults now, so there's nothing keeping him here. For a while he thought, and I tried my best to make him understand that the love he felt for you was indeed as strong as ever. There she was, June. This poor man loved you passionately. Why else did he continue to see you as a supermodel when your ass was spreading and your breasts were sagging? You didn't even try to keep yourself fit or attractive because you didn't have to. He loved you so much that it just didn't matter. From what he told me, he finally found a way to burn this love out of his heart. That was when he saw you in room 123 of the Bid Avenue Motel, having sex with some fat, bald guy this afternoon. When he left a little before you, he just wanted to go home, pack all his things into that truck that was leaving when you arrived, and say goodbye to you. He has a new job in another state. He left. But I won't give him a divorce, I said. He doesn't need one, she chuckled. Just because you're married doesn't mean you have to live together or be together. The only time he would need a divorce is if he wanted to get married again, and you've already turned him against all women enough. The last thing he told me was that he only wanted his kids and his car. I really hope it was worth it. You almost got him back, June. After all this time, you almost got him back, and you just ruined it all. I slid to the floor and started crying. Part. As I pull into my driveway near the beach condo, I wave to one of my neighbors. She's a typical Florida girl, tall and slender, with large breasts and long sandy blonde hair. She has a typical Florida name like Sandy or Tammy or Heather or something like that. I've been here for 7 months now, and I'm finally starting to feel at home. My children often visit me. Both of these parasites stayed with me when they came here for spring break. Of course, they also came for Thanksgiving, and although I didn't expect it, they came for Christmas as well. I had another visitor who came regularly for a couple of months until he reached his goal. Now she doesn't come here as often, but we still communicate on the phone. We'll have a connection for life, but it's not like love or anything like that. Speaking of love, now I live with my love. I was fully committed to it from the moment we arrived in Florida, where I became the company's new regional manager. She's been with me every time since we came here, and she's all I need. We didn't have any problems getting here, although we stopped at many bars and other places. This one will never betray me. She is truly mine and only mine. I wanted to show her how much I appreciate her after a long journey, so I bought her something to let her know how I feel about her. Oh, and I gave her the engagement ring that was meant for June. She really didn't know what to do with him. It just hangs on a chain from the rearview mirror. But she loves the blower I put in her. We did a complete tuning. Supercharger, intercooler, high-flow injectors, iridium spark plugs, the whole package. After spending so much money on her, I'm sure we'll be together forever. I smile when Sandy or whatever her name is waves at me again and calls me. I can't understand a word she says, and she knows it. I think she speaks quietly on purpose so that she can come up to me and talk. Fuck it. No more unnecessary complications. Hell, I get more than enough sex without any complications. Heck, I'm getting a lot more than I have in the last 10 years, even if it's just once or twice a month. I yell that I'll talk to her later, Sandy, Tammy, Lisa, Heather. Damn, one of those names has to be hers. I imagine myself changing into running shorts and going for a run on the beach. After this, I will have a quick snack and then take my pet for a night walk to let my little pony stretch her legs. I understand that this is not an ideal life for everyone. For many people, riding into the sunset alone doesn't feel like a victory. But after 10 long fucking years in a prison that no one forced me to go to, I have come to truly understand myself, and maybe not what I want, but what I need. We are all different, and as the song says, some will win, some will lose, and some are born to sing the blues. But the film never ends, it goes on and on. I think I'm one of those who lose, but I tried my best to win. It just wasn't in the cards. But I agree with this. Maybe next time I can win. Not every guy gets the girl. Some of us have to settle for a good life and a cool car. When I first came to this prison, I never stopped believing. There was no need. I could leave there any time I wanted. But to do this, I needed to leave my children, and I could never do that. But I always knew that I would get out someday. We are all connected in some way. Maybe it's poverty, a shitty job, or just a bad marriage. But if we don't stop believing, we will eventually be free. June. I haven't seen my sister for many months. When she called and invited me to the party, I was shocked. She was probably right to be angry with me. I ruined my life and my marriage, despite everything she did over the years to help me. My life went downhill after Dell left. Without his income, I lost my home. It was a long and painful process. We refinanced the house several times over the years and gradually lost more and more of our equity in it. We took out another mortgage to help pay for the kids' education, and after that we really had almost no equity left in the house. So when Dell left and I started missing my mortgage payments, it became clear what was in store for us. Finally, I just rented an apartment that I could afford, called the bank, and told them that I left the key in the mailbox. It was a sad time when you think about all the blood, sweat, and tears we put into this house over the years. When I knocked on May's apartment door, I heard squeals and laughter from inside. May opened the door, and I got the biggest shock of my life. My sister was pregnant. May had always been the prettier of the two of us, but now that I looked like some kind of beggar, she was simply beaming. She pulled me inside and hugged me. I have never seen her so happy. May, how? I started. I'll tell you later, she said. Now just relax and enjoy. You look terrible, and according to my niece and nephew, you're not eating well. With these words, she turned and went to open the door for the other guests. For a couple of hours I ate, drank, and tried to be cheerful. But the curiosity about not only my sister's pregnancy, but also her sudden desire to see me again, did not leave me. I also thought about how much the procedure costs. I heard that it is very expensive. I wonder if her friend or lover, or whatever they should be called, will raise the child with her, or if it will cause problems. Hell, I know the kid will call me Mama, but what will he call another woman? Damn, what if it's a boy? After I had eaten more food than I could remember and watched as everyone except me gave my sister gifts for her unborn child, the guests began to leave. As I started to rise, May shook her head to indicate that I should stay. About half an hour later, she sat down on the chair next to me. May, I didn't think that you. I started. She simply smiled. I didn't tell anyone until I started showing it, she said. I think it's just not something that people who know me would expect me to want. There have been a lot of changes and discoveries in my life that I probably wasn't prepared for. Is your friend happy about this? I asked, trying to figure out how best she could address the person who was with her. Speaking of happiness, how are you? She asked, changing the subject. I'm pretty fucking miserable, I said. I go through periods where I cry for days on end, and then other times I decide to find him and... She simply smiled and nodded her head. I'm going to find him again, I said. Don't stop believing, she said with a smile. She seemed really very happy. So, your friend, I started again. She's gone, May said, still smiling. I can't blame her. Children weren't on the menu when we got together. She's not the type to want kids, and she didn't like the way I got pregnant at all. But I really wanted a child before it was too late. Damn, I don't blame her, I said. I don't think I could have gone through all these procedures and tests and all this. Ugh. I got my baby the exact same way you did, she said. My jaw dropped. I felt saliva dripping down the edge of my lips. I had to use my hands to close my mouth because I couldn't use my jaw muscles. You mean it was a man? I said. But I thought you. I'm still like that, she said. But I thought you hated men, I said. I found one I don't hate, she said. It took me my whole life, but I finally found someone who isn't a complete asshole. I found someone who has real principles and who sticks to his commitments even when those around him don't. I found a man who I can trust with my secrets, even when I can't trust them with some family members. I knew she meant me when she said that. I tried to change the subject. I'm trying to hire private investigators to find a case for me, I said. For what? She asked. Because I want him back, I hissed. June, leave him alone, she said. Wherever he is happy. At least he's not suffering anymore. He'll be happier when we're together again, I replied sharply. June, you've been cheating on him for over 10 years, she said. But that was only because I needed sex, I said. Damn, he was the one who brought me to this point, and I never found anyone who could make me feel the way he did. And it wasn't just about sex. Even though the sex was amazing, I miss him just laying next to me, holding me in his arms more than anything. May, I remember when I was pregnant, he was laying next to me and just rubbing my belly, telling me how much he loved me. Yes, it really is the best, she said. He's really good at it. I only cheated on him when I just couldn't take it anymore. It was only 2 or 3 times a year, I said. But this wouldn't have happened if you hadn't started by cheating on him in the first place, she said. Maybe he still has a little corner in his heart, and he's just waiting for it to heal again. Maybe if you give it time and be a good girl, someday he might forgive you, and you could get back together. Don't stop believing in June, he never stopped. I cried, and she wiped my tears. But even if I'm a good girl and don't cheat anymore, I'm not as beautiful as I was. Damn, I'm having a hard time finding men who like me now, I said. And since Dell left, I just lost all interest in sex. It cost me too much. Still, even if I was a good girl, how would he ever know? I said thoughtfully. I would tell him, she said lazily, and it seemed as if she too was falling asleep. But her words made me think about everything we just said. What the hell do you mean? What would you tell him? I screamed. Then I stared at her. Did you say he's really good at this? She simply nodded and rubbed her tummy, smiling. He's really good. End. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.